reigning and defending champion Michael Walsh was able to take down the first round and set himself up to try and defend that belt. Well, TJ, we had a pretty intense first few turns of that game.
Definitely.
And we're looking for some more action on the weekend. We've seen some results start to pour in from the first round, and so we wanted to give you guys an update. Coming into to round 2, we saw a lot of pretty tough matchups coming through in the first round. We see a lot of players that were back from the first tournament on different lists.
Yep.
We've got Andrew Ford, who was playing Eldar last time. He's actually playing Imperial Knights this time around. We've got Brian Delgado, who was playing Imperium the last time around. This time he's playing Combined Eldar, Dark Eldar.
Okay.
We've got a handful of others who have switched over to different armies, and then a handful of folks who decided to stay the course and stick with the list they came through the first time, or at least the same armies.
Sure.
The competitive scene, and as new books have comes out, the metagames continue to evolve. I think everyone for the last few months has been talking about Imperial Knights as being the big shakeup to the metagame.
Absolutely.
And so, how do you think they're fitting in? We saw a couple of knights in the first round of the tournament. What has your experience so far been as you see them on the tabletop and you hear people talking about them?
So Imperial Knights they are way better off than a lot of people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Incredible relics at their disposal. The Flamer weapon, the Flamer relic, is incredible. The ability to effectively give them a storm shield. I mean, the survivability aspect of Knights is what's always been a problem for them. If you can close the gap, get them into combat, the whole bang, they've always been shot, and that's been a thing since as far back as 7th edition. But as Walsh was able to show you just a little bit ago, all it takes is a little bit of screening.
Yeah.
So you got to see kind of the best and worst of that, scenario right there. First round of combat, it gets locked in combat and it gets taken down. But at the same time, if you can keep it back, keep it screened, keep it protected, it missed one shot in the early rounds on the invulnerable, Inquisitor Kodiaz, because I stand by it. Cool guys don't look at explosions, and that's why it missed. But right after that, every shot he was taking something, a major threat off the table, just gone. So really, I'm very impressed with where they're at. I like to see those in the place of the bite captains. The bite captains have their benefit, but I'll be honest with you, aesthetically, the Knights just look cooler.
It is pretty fun getting to see some big knights stomping around the table for sure. It'll be interesting to see if we see any Gallants today, see any of the more close range variants. We saw a Castellan and a Warden here today. The Warden sort of filling that mid range role, but the Castellan, being that long range knight, something that is better to castle up while still getting your damage output out of. It'll be interesting to see as we progress through the tournament. Do the lists that have a lot of knights? Are they successful, or are the lists that have the one pocket knight in the back, or are those ones doing better? But the screen, definitely a big part of why there was success there.
I agree. I agree completely. So with your pure knights list, the gap filler is the Armiger, and they're great. They're great little models. When they first came out in Forgebane, they didn't seem like they were going to be enough. A little bit of rules tweaking, a much heavier gunline variant in the Warglaive came out, and I mean, they're D3 damage a shot.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, they put out a
ton of firepower,
and that strength 7 -1 multiple damage profile seems to be at a really good place in the competitive metagame right now.
Absolutely.
You look at things like Dark Eldar vehicles. You look at things like strength 7 tanks coming out of or toughness 7 tanks coming out of a lot of different armies. Really, unless those are shooting at a knight specifically, you're getting some pretty good point per damage ratios.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And the -1 seems to kind of be the sweet spot right now.
Yeah, heavy bolters are a perfect example.
Yeah, whether it be knights in a lot of cases, whether it be Venoms, whether it be Ravagers or other Eldar vehicles. The fact that a lot of the most popular vehicles right now have an invuln save means that at a certain point, a las cannon is going to become inefficient because you're paying for that extra AP,
exactly,
and you're paying for extra strength that it might not get you to a 2, and you're going to be on a 3 anyways.
Yep.
So, you know, higher shots may be the way to go in a lot
Exactly.
of cases.
So what we found in the long run is, as the game has progressed and as the codexes have come out, even early in 8th, we kind of knew that weapons like heavy bolters, moderate high strength with just a little bit of armor shred,
Hmm.
complemented with volume,
Yeah.
became the answer for. I mean, it's to the point now where you'd almost rather have heavy bolters than las cannons. Look at oh goodness, look at battle cannons.
Mm.
You know, you do more damage with a battle cannon on a Lehman Russ than you do with an las cannon.
Yeah.
You can take more of them with heavy bolters than you could alternatively,
Yeah.
and you end up doing more work with the heavy bolters anyway,
Yeah.
because you don't feel as bad about wasting a shot like that on chaff.
Some guardsmen.
Yeah, exactly,
Some
exactly.
guardsmen or some
So,
orcs or
and a
yeah.
perfect example of that happened in game 1 when Aaron had to fire the neutron at
Add guardsmen.
at
Yeah.
guardsmen. You
Yeah.
know, it's like boom. Well,
Yeah.
it's
It's like
very very dead.
that
So
guy. That guy right there is very dead.
that
But
one
just him.
guy in
But just him.
particular, toast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but guard don't care. Guard
Yeah.
pile bodies. It's what they do.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see with the orcs and the Space Wolves books coming soon.
Yep.
You know, that introduces another horde army, right?
Yep.
That introduces another army where that heavy bolter profile is a pretty good place to be,
That's right.
right? Because you're taking away their T-shirt saves. You're
Mhm.
exactly one strength where or one strength above their toughness, which is
Yep.
right where you want to be. Um, at the same time, if the Space Wolves are able to come in with some higher toughness values, with some better armor saves,
Mhm.
especially if they can bring a lot of 2-ups to the table,
Mhm.
and then you're only pushing people to 3s with that -1,
Yep.
we'll see where the efficiency breakpoints start to be. But as of right now, it seems like it's pretty difficult to argue against higher volume, a little bit lower strength,
Yep.
and no more than 1 or 2 AP.
Yep. That medium high strength is kind of the sweet spot. You look at the typical vehicles in the game that are seeing play a lot of the time right now, with the exception of the Lehman Russ, which you don't even
Yep.
see a lot of. I know we've got a couple guys. Big shout out to James Holmes. He's a diehard parking lot guard till he dies. So he's an example, but he's the exception, not the rule. Guard are playing bodies. They're putting, as you saw with Walsh's list.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put down 80 models. Some of them are going to be fast with the Rough Riders,
Yep.
and then you saw just how fast they are with Run Run Run.
Yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
was across the board completely by turn 2.
Yeah, that double
So,
advance really
it's
it
huge.
catches people off guard. It's
Yeah,
like
it's so
the
big.
plague bearers coming off of the feculent gnarl maul.
Mhm.
People just really very consistently underestimate just how far those models can go in a turn.
Yep.
And it's even exaggerated when you have Nurgle because everyone just assumes that they're slow.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure.
not this edition. Not coming off
Yep.
of those trees.
Anybody who's played more than one game, you have that moment where you're like, those are way faster than
Yeah.
I thought. Their base move's only 4. How did they get here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then with the case of Nurgle, I mean, kind of jumping into them, when you look at their horde option, you've got their disgusting resilience, you've got their plague weapons giving reroll to attack. So you see it on both sides, and it gives a really solid foundation for the orc army, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you that custom mega force fields are going to be a huge presence,
Yeah.
because all you've got to have is one guy from your entire 30-man squad
Yeah.
in the range of that custom mega force field.
And we saw the effectiveness of that type of aura
Mhm.
actually at the first Barnyard.
Yeah.
Where a handful of players were playing the Custodes Banner Bear, right?
Mhm.
The I'll look up the name. But the one that has the aura that gives a 5++ invulnerable save,
Mhm.
and it can impact other Imperium units.
Yep.
And so a lot of people were using that as a way to give that guard blob a 5++.
Yep.
Then you cast Psychic Barrier, and then you cast Take Cover, and all of a sudden you're looking at a bunch of guardsmen that have a 3++.
Yep.
And that's just not something anybody wants to have to do.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just played Tempest's Scions the whole time, but
Yeah.
whatever. And you saw that originally, even before Custodes. You saw that with not as bad, but the building blocks were there with Celestine.
Yep.
So it's what can we do to make every inconvenience possible for your opponent.
Yeah.
And in situations like guard being one of the few cases where their 10-man squad becomes a 9-man squad because of the mortar team.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and
so
from an ITC perspective,
yeah,
things
it's
like
even
that are
bigger.
just invaluable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, as soon as you can start, tweaking the smallest things in your army that are going to lead to, oh, now my opponent can't score this secondary mission. Okay, now my opponent can't score this secondary. And all of a sudden you put them in a situation where you can make a list
Hmm.
where your opponent really only has 4 options
Hmm.
to choose for their secondaries because they just
Exactly.
cannot score the other ones.
Yep.
And that type of metagaming, can go a long way when you consider just how important every point is in a 2-day tournament like this.
Agreed.
We,
Absolutely.
we talked about it in the first round. Even though after that night died, we knew pretty heavily things were in Mike's favor.
Yep.
Um, every single turn of that game was
Hmm.
important,
Yep.
and we saw as the game progressed that. And you even mentioned it. We're getting to a point where it's like, does Mike need to start slowing down
Yep.
to make sure that he's going to continue to score these points in the later turns of the game?
Yep.
And it wasn't always like that. In previous iterations of 40K at the
Hmm.
competitive level, if you had a shot at tabling your opponent,
Yeah, you just
you
did
would
it.
just do that as quickly as
Exactly.
possible. Right.
Exactly. You got bonuses for winning a tabled game.
Right.
Right. So, and I look back at game one and I look at turn three when I first mentioned, maybe he should backpedal a little bit.
Mm.
If you think about it, coming into turn four and turn 5,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was actually turn 4 when he lost Kilmore. Had he backpedaled a little bit,
Yeah.
he'd have still had models to kill to get Kilmore.
Yeah. He had plus 3'd
Yeah.
on kill points on the previous turn.
Yep. Exactly.
Even if
And he
you,
didn't
you
even need
leave
to
one
do
of
that.
those, and those types of or that type of awareness, in the
Hmm.
middle of the game, because it's difficult
Yeah.
to
Oh no, tunnel vision's a thing.
remind yourself, and I don't even know if I would call it tunnel vision, but it's challenging to leave threats in your opponent's list on the table when you know
Agreed.
that you can take them out.
Agreed.
And yet there has to be this like constant give and take
Hmm.
where you're saying, okay, I'm gonna leave this here, and that means that you're gonna kill my squad right here,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna kill these 3, so that's fine
Right.
because I'm still gonna plus 2 you.
Yep.
And finding every turn that margin is what it really separates the players who are going to get a W
Yep.
and the players who are going to max.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in ATC, what folks that may be new to it don't know is you're playing for the whole tournament. You're not just playing for the one game. You're not playing for the one W. And really, you can field 4-0,
Hmm.
but you're not going to beat somebody who may be 3-1 with a substantially higher score than you.
Yeah.
So
And that's why it's always important to read your tournament packet.
exactly.
Always.
Exactly. Know your rules.
All right. So we are going to take a quick break while we get things ready to go into round 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. We're very excited to bring you the rest of this awesome weekend of Warhammer
Absolutely.
40K live here from the Red Barn, brought to you by Roundabout Gaming. We'll be right back. We have a great matchup here for you. We've got Eddie and Teddy rocking it at the feature table.
Possibly go wrong.
So we have a great matchup here for you versus it's Admech with a little bit of Blood Angel spice, just a little bit, and that'll be played by Eddie, and he will be playing against Teddy, who this is gonna be good. Teddy, who is playing Chaos. He has a mixture of Thousand Suns. He's got a Supreme Command. He's got Magnus in this list.
Yep.
Um, He's got Armand. He got some princes. There's one unit of Zangors, and then he also has a Death Guard detachment
Okay.
with, get this, 57 Poxwalkers and Typhus and Necrosis. So we've got a battalion, a Supreme Command, and a patrol coming in for Teddy and his Chaos list. And then on the other side, we've got Eddie, and he's playing his Admech.
So I'm a big fan of this list.
I had a feeling.
So it's good to see Admech again. I like that they're making a strong showing. This one's a little bit different. This one's a little more aggressive. You're gonna see your standard Belisarius call ball, right? So we've got that. This time, though, you're going to see a lot more Castellan robots. We talked about this at length, the firepower and potential of a Castellan robot, and hopefully we'll actually get to see just the true firepower that they can bring to bear. That's going to be complemented with some Skitarii Rangers. There are no real tricks there, just kind of bare bones Skitarii Rangers. You are going to see a couple of Onager Dune Crawlers again, so we're going to see some more performances from them.
What weapon does he have on the onagers in this list?
He's going to be running neutron lasers on both.
Okay.
So you're going to see some heavy firepower, probably aimed at Magnus, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So when you get into the Blood Angels detachment, you're running into kind of your typical Death Company drop and assault list,
Yeah.
right? So your captain with the Storm Shield, the Angel's Wings, the Thunder Hammer. You've got a standard tactical squad. This is a patrol detachment. So it's honestly it's not that much in the command point genre. So we're coming back to AdMech not having as big of a presence for command points.
Right.
But
yeah, that's the kind of difference between pairing the Blood Angels with AdMech versus pairing them with IG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or Astro Militarum.
But he comes back around with another Forge World detachment on AdMech again, and this time we're coming into Stygius 8. Stygius 8 is the aggro for AdMech. And you see that when you start to take a look at the list. You see your Ranger Alpha, you see your Rangers again, no big deal there. Looks like we've got some rolls going off.
Yeah, so the players resolving their pre-games here. It looks like Teddy won the roll to determine the deployment type. And it looks like we've got a 3 here. He might be needing a BRB real quick. I'm going to get them their deployment type.
So while we get that taken care of, let's go ahead and jump back to what we were talking about in Eddie's list. Coming back to the combat element of Stygius 8 in the game. You're going to see some Dragoons. He's going to be running 4 Dragoons with Taser Lances. Great model, really fast. And it's going to give him the kind of the move that he needs to get around the problems that you saw in the first game with AdMech. So in the first game, the AdMech was very kind of, it couldn't move much, had a lot of firepower, but didn't get the opportunity to take advantage of it because it was too busy trying to realign itself. In this particular list, you're going to see that in a different perspective. And instead of struggling with the guns, the Blood Angels are going to be able to take care of that alongside the Stygius 8 Mechanicum. Little known fact, unless you actually play AdMech, whenever you run the Dragoons, because they come with a broad spectrum data tether, if you use the stratagem on them to increase their weapon skill by 2, their Taser Lances pop on 4s.
Yeah, it is absolutely nasty.
It is.
When that unit comes in on you, tesseling on 4s.
Exactly. And it's strength 8.
Yeah.
So I really like this list. We've got one guy voting for chaos here.
Well, let's not say I'm voting. I don't want to be biased. But I think it's going to be awesome to see this matchup. There's going to be a lot of units that line up well. And as of right now, it looks like the players have marked up that center circle. We've got the same deployment as in round 1. So the players are going to mark off a 9-inch radius circle in the center of the table. And then they are each going to take a corner, table quarter rather.
Gotcha.
And then that means that we are going to see fairly compact deployment zones again in the search and destroy deployment.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how both players leverage that. It's going to give the Stygius 8 detachment in the AdMech list potentially a lot of room to work with. Because he's going to be able to infiltrate those units in a big section of the table.
Yep.
Especially because I don't think that Teddy has any way to get outside of his deployment zone.
I don't think so either.
From go. Now, he may take the Dark Matter Relic so that he can jump his Angors on turn 1.
Okay.
But without something during the deployment, anything that happens before the first turn of the game to take some of that board, create a beachhead, it may mean that, at least in the beginning of the game, we see Eddie with an advantage around his board control.
If Eddie goes first, those Dragoons are going to be on top of something turn 1. I mean, they're going to have the ability to deploy 9 inches away. They've got a 10-inch move base. So they're going to close the gap on whatever he deems as a threat, and they're 3 attacks apiece, and they're exploding into 2 additional attacks on anything on a 4-up.
Yeah.
So for 2 command points, he's hitting basically 20 hits,
Yeah.
and
It
that's
adds up quick.
so big. And with Call in the list, he can adjust +/-1, even the Stygius, the one Forge World canonical for them.
Yeah.
So he may shift to reroll ones to hit. Canonical of the Iron Fist, I think it is. So if he doesn't go first, he gives himself an opportunity to counter deploy because he can relocate the Dragoons. So, however, on the counter to that, Teddy has the Psychic phase uncontested, and it's his wheelhouse. So not only does he have the strength of the Psychic phase as his strongest characteristic, he has it without any potential threat.
Yeah, there's no deny at all out of the Imperialist. So we see the players getting into deployment here. Not surprisingly, Teddy starting out with a big blob of Poxwalkers. He's got 3 units of 19 Poxwalkers, and he'll likely be leveraging those as the main units that he's pushing out with. That's his screen for all of those Thousand Sons Demon Princes and Aramon. Um, and we'll see, how well he's able to leverage them. We're looking at a very different AdMech list this time around.
Yep.
Dropping the Warden has allowed him to spread out those points across several units that have significantly greater weight of dice. Right? We're going to see 5 robots instead of 2 like
Yep.
last round, and that Dragoon unit. It's just a lot more individual dice. And when you're going against 3 Poxwalker blobs, that's a good place to be.
Absolutely. So one of the things that obviously hindsight is 2020. Me personally, I'd wait to deploy the screen to see where Eddie puts the Castellans.
Okay.
Because if Eddie goes first, like we talked about, the Castellans know where the screen is, they punch a hole. So now, mind you, there's a ton of Poxwalkers here, and they're all 1 unit, is my understanding.
It's 3 units of 19.
3, okay.
Yeah,
Still
3 units of
nearly
19.
20 guys.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I believe there's a stratagem to make them -1 to hit.
There's a psychic power.
Okay.
Miasma, yeah, that can come out of Typhus potentially, to be able to do that. There's a good chance that he'll have the ability to give them +1 to their toughness.
Right.
And he'll have the ability to give them -1 to hit.
Right, exactly.
And if once you're looking at T5 Poxwalkers that are -1 to hit, it very quickly becomes harder to deal with as opposed to the negative model, which is T3.
So, just to give you some perspective as to why I said what I said,
Yeah.
When you put the Castellans into, I think it's Conquest, is the double tap. They are 9 shots apiece, and that becomes 18 shots per model.
Right, that's when they anchor down.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So over 5 guys, you're looking at 90 shots.
Yeah.
Strength 6 -2.
That's some DACA.
Yeah, exactly. It's tremendous. It's very easily capable of taking even Magnus out of the game, because Wrath of Mars procced on top of that turns every 6 to wound into a mortal wound in addition. Against the Poxwalkers, it removes their cover, so Miasma is actually wasted in that case. But at the end of the day, when you look at the screen setup, there's just so many bodies, and he's going to set those princes up right behind him. So maybe he's a little bit safer than we're thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think both of these armies have the ability, either through a lot of smites or through a lot of shooting, to really tear a hole open in their opponent's army.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see, how big of an advantage going first is in this game.
Yep.
For the mission this round, you may have noticed that there are 6 tan objective markers on the table now. We've got 4 corners, but they're pushed a little bit tighter in on the table this time. And then we have those 2 objective markers that are lined up horizontally near the center, just on the edge of that ring of dice that they created for this deployment zone. So 6 objectives instead of 5, and much more dense. And so holding center in this mission is even more critical than it may have been in the last round.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see We've got an AdMech army that has a bigger footprint than the one that we saw in the first round, and then we've got a Chaos army that has a similar footprint to what we saw out of the IG army
Yep.
in the first round. So whoever is able to project the best, whoever is able to tag these objectives without having to overreach with their units, is going to have a strong map advantage.
Yep.
Now, one thing I want to point out here, you may have noticed that Teddy just deployed his first Demon Prince. And when he did that, he placed 2 cards down that you can see right in the center here. So what he's doing is he's visually representing the psychic powers that he's chosen for this specific prince on the table. So I just want to commend him for doing that. I
It's a
think
great
it's a
practice.
perfect way to demonstrate to your opponent, exactly what you're putting where, and there's no points of contention. There's no opportunity for someone to say, "Wait, isn't that the one that has warp time, and isn't that the one that has glamour?" You don't have
Exactly.
to worry about that. So just a great, kind of heads up way to manage his own army,
Hmm.
and it's good. It's good to see that type of thinking where you're not just making it easier for yourself, but you're also improving the communication you have with your opponent.
Exactly. It One of the things that we've been seeing a lot lately in previous tournaments and competitions is miscommunication between you and the person you're playing against.
Mm.
And the great thing about where we're at so far is we've not ran into that yet. We are seeing nothing but the opposite, which means that maybe people are starting to pay attention. They're starting to see that communication is key,
Yeah.
and that's very important in a game where little things like that can really make or break the entire thing for both players.
Yeah, yeah, they absolutely can. And at the end of the day, Warhammer is it's a pretty complex game.
Yeah,
There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of different books, there's a lot of different units, and the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your opponent is just to be clear about what options you have on the table, what models you have on the table. That way, everyone has all of the cards in front of them, and they can make decisions with full information.
exactly.
Um, Now we're seeing here, exactly what we were expecting from the Chaos Army. The Spoxwalkers have wrapped and created a nice bubble, a nice pocket for all of these Thousand Suns characters to drop into.
Hmm.
Typhus is there, dead center. Teddy was checking just a minute ago to make sure he's got that aura in range, touching each unit,
Hmm.
so that they get their additional toughness. Actually, very key here because with those robots being on strength 6, you definitely don't want those Poxwalkers to be T3. Um, on the other side, we're starting to see that increased footprint
Yep.
that we mentioned out of the AdMech. So he's got 6 Ranger units instead of 3 this time,
Hmm.
and that's much more room to work with. Um, so Teddy here taking the time to measure exactly where he wants to put Magnus.
Hmm.
Um, that is definitely not a model you want to lose on the first turn, and he's not quite as impervious as he used to be.
So one thing that I really like here from the AdMech player is you don't already see the robots.
Mm,
All he's done so far is place his screens,
yeah.
and that is really important when you start to look at the game on a grander scale. You want to gather as much information as possible before you put down some of your wildcard units.
Mm,
So, in circumstances like the Castellans, which have the output of 90 shots in a turn,
mhm.
um, you want to make sure that they have the best line of sight possible because, as we saw in game one, just like we were talking about earlier, they start to move,
Right.
their firepower falls through the floor.
Yeah.
So, it's the longer he can wait to get those robots on the table, the stronger they're going to be in the long run.
Mm.
And it looks like he's going to continue on that same track because we're seeing the Doom Crawlers coming down now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how much work he's able to get out of these dune crawlers as he positions them. Potentially looking at Magnus early. Um, but I think you're exactly right. With the makeup of these 2 armies, the key for both sides may be those robots and
Hmm.
just making sure that, from Teddy's side, he's mitigating the output of that unit as much as possible,
Hmm.
and from Eddie's side, just trying to get every single shot he can out of them.
Yep.
Because the faster he can kill that screen, the faster he gets to start trying doing damage to the real threats on the other side of the
Yep.
table.
Teddy's answer for the depth of field is obviously his flying creatures, but also the Zangors, like you mentioned, if they take the ability to kind of just be wherever he needs them to be.
Yep. And it looks like he did just deploy the Zangars all the way on the backboard edge. That's going to indicate that he's
Mhm.
decided to go with that dark matter crystal. Starting them on the table and then teleporting them to a different part of the map is how you can get around the turn 1 deep strike rule.
Yep.
And so it'll be interesting to see. Eddie has done a good job of creating this border around his patrol. If he gets to go first, he's going to be able to get to expand that out. We'll have to see how much work the Zangors are able to do this game, because it looks like that's going to be Teddy's best way to compete with Eddie's screen.
Yep.
Is that unit. And as soon as, similarly to how if Eddie can get through all those Poxwalkers, if Teddy can do the same getting through those Rangers, and all of a sudden these smites start hitting all of these onagers and these robots,
Yep.
That's where you really want your mortal wounds going.
Absolutely.
So I think this turn to, or this roll to go first is going to be very important for this game.
If I'm 100% honest, if I'm Teddy, I consider giving Eddie first turn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're looking, just as an AdMech player, and I don't know if Teddy plays AdMech, so I may have kind of an inside perspective here. Yeah, Canicles go off, but Canicles go off anyway. Your demons are as strong as they're ever going to be, outside of increasing their in-bone save maybe a little bit. But he has to. Those Rangers are going to go down faster than those Poxwalkers.
Yeah.
So Teddy has more time than Eddie. And when you're playing the game based on the objectives, the ability to kind of counteract a very slow-moving army with only a few pieces, it also lets you see where Eddie is putting himself for turn 2. And it gives you more control of the kind of the momentum of the drops and protecting yourself from the screen, from the death company drop. But again, on the counter to that, all those psychic spells going off before Eddie can even react, that's huge too.
Yeah, it could. I think both players have an opportunity to open a lead. I think both players, recognizing that there are 6 objective markers on the table, are going to be there is that advantage to going second, right? You can play that objective game better. The thing I'm looking at here is there's quite a lot of offense in both armies, and you have to wonder at what point does the objective game become secondary to who has models left on the table.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see. It looks like, I believe, we've got the deco starting off of the board. So as far as I can tell, it looks like they are deep striking, which does mean there's a little bit more time for Teddy to wait before he has to have that crash in on him. Now it's not a terribly large Death Company squad, right?
Right. No, it's not huge.
Okay.
But it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it's still a lot of attacks.
Exactly.
Still a lot of attacks for sure.
As we saw with the
I get a +1
with the first game.
Oh, here comes the roll to go first.
7.
Oh,
the
and
7.
Teddy comes in with that 6 + 1 for the 7, and it looks like Eddie has failed to seize. And since he was attempting to seize, it looks like Teddy has elected to go first. So first little checkbox for Eddie there, or for Teddy rather. All right, and now we're gonna go into the top of turn 1 with Teddy's 1,000 Suns and Death Guard. All right, so we're gonna see some advances coming off the Poxwalkers here. Just a 1 rolled on that first advance, but it's gonna get him onto the objective he was looking to tag. And Teddy really just looking to expand that bubble and make sure that he gets into smite range. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do with these Zangors on the first turn. The Death Company coming in, if you do press up with the Zangors, being able to drop still inside of their deployment zone without having to worry about that turn 1 deep strike rule may be a pretty threatening countercharge element for the Zangors here. But we'll have to see how hard he wants to press with them. All right, second unit Poxwalkers advancing here. Teddy clearly trying to make sure that he's got control of at least half of the objectives here. He may pressure the objective that is on the far side of the table from these poxwalkers that you're seeing now in order to try and get that hold more. Um, but it looks like his plan, at least step one, is tag these 3 objectives, put poxwalkers all over them. They're mine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're going to see something similar with the Poxwalkers and even the Zangors to an extent that you saw with the Guard in the first game. It's just a massive bodies that are going to be difficult to move off of certain locations once they're planted. Poxwalkers are going to be even more the case because on top of disgusting resilience and being harder to hit, being tougher, there are even stratagems you can use that when things die within so far of them, they become Poxwalkers.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I don't know if Teddy had points in reserve. I don't think that he did. Um, but we'll have to review that real quick and then see if he does have the ability to farm up poxwalkers off of other
Right.
poxwalker units and things of that nature. But he's moving around this piece of terrain here. What he has done, from what I can see, is he's given himself pockets of each of these poxwalker units where, depending on how he pulls models, those larger pieces of terrain near the center may allow him to dodge some line of sight
Yep.
after initial volleys of fire.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see. Now, all of those robots are in one unit.
Yeah.
Which means they're all going to shoot simultaneously. So we've got a full 5-man squad here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're placed pretty centrally in Eddie's deployment zone, but they've got a pretty wide footprint.
Yep.
And so even with that maneuvering and trying to manage that line of sight blocking terrain, it's going to be tough for Teddy to find any angles where these robots can't get their shots in.
Yeah, they're going to shoot something, but it may not. It doesn't have to be ideal.
Yeah.
And we saw that earlier. Now, one thing to note is that there is no data smith.
Okay.
So the only way to flip the Castellan strategy or protocol is with the stratagem.
Okay.
So once you're out of that, there's no going back. You burn the bridge.
Yeah.
So if he's going to flip them into double tap mode, they're not going back to Protector Doctrine. So.
Yeah, and with the way the footprint is, he may just want to live there anyway.
Yeah.
With the way that, or with the list that we've seen, and the metagame kind of progressing towards this horde or small number of very, very big guys that we're seeing, being in Conqueror protocols the whole game might not be as big of a drawback as it could have been in the past.
The only tear there is they can't get out of combat. If that's the case, they're
all right.
stuck.
So we're seeing Magnus come out from the back here. So we got an advance coming out of him, and he's gonna put himself right in the pocket here of this Poxwalker blob next to a couple of Thousand Suns Demon Princes. He's fanned out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's not keeping them all on top of each other. He's got one of those Demon Princes hanging out wide just a little bit. I would not be surprised if he is trying to make sure that he doesn't have all of his Demon Princes on one side or the other, because he wants to be able to react to those Dragoons.
Yeah, the thing about these particular Dragoons, and the thing to remember is they're only going to have benefits against Flyers. They're not going to have any benefits against Flyers. They have the call reroll, but they're still on 3s. So it's not like it is with the Icarus. The shot's not as guaranteed, but the damage is as frightening, if not more.
Yeah.
Because it's still min 3.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I'm not as scared of the Onager as I am of the Castellans.
Yeah, I think the robots are definitely the most threatening thing on the table from
Absolutely.
Teddy's perspective.
For the demons, to be certain. Magnus needs to stay approximately 43 inches away from them at any given time. So.
Well, we're seeing the Dark Matter Crystal being used here. The Zangors being redeployed on the far side of the table onto that objective right where we thought they were going to land. So they're going to be just outside of 9 inches here.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the instrument, which means that 9-inch charge is actually an 8-inch charge for them. We'll see in his psychic phase if he's able to buy the extra reroll.
Okay.
To see if he can reroll both of those dice on that charge. Puts him to pretty good odds to make it. We'll see if he's able to make the charge onto that Ranger squad. If he is, between pylons, consolidates, and fighting twice, there is a robot
Yeah.
that is hanging out just behind that dune crawler. It'll be interesting to see if he can make it all the way there.
Well, even if he only ties up the dune crawler, I feel like we may have ran into our first misstep in deployment alone, with that crawler being as close to the screen as it is.
Yeah, it's possible there should have been more of a buffer there,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we'll see here. He's got to make that charge before anything else.
Yep.
And with that Zangor unit being moved, it's looking like we're about to get into the psychic phase. Teddy just used a command point to buff one of his demon princes so that it is casting with the +1. And Eddie going ahead and taking his opportunity there to try and steal a command point. All right, so the first power. All right, he's got that off on an 8. That is the miasma on the poxwalkers.
That needs a 6. It goes off on a 6.
And Type is successful as well on that blessing there to get them +1 strength, +1 toughness. So those poxwalkers now at that 5/5 stat line.
Yep.
Weaver's a fate.
All right, Weaver of Fate going off on Magnus. That's a perils here.
Magnus doesn't suffer perils though, does he?
Yeah,
I believe he's casting
So
Weaver
how much
from
damage for
one of
him?
the princes
It'll be
onto
2
Magnus.
damage
Oh.
for him.
And we're going to see where this damage goes right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that was the prince on the far left side there. So I think it's likely we're going to see both Glamour and Weaver come up on Magnus here. Just to make sure that he's as safe as he can possibly be. Get him that 3++, give him that -1 to hit. And it is going to leave the
Needing a 5.
Zangor is a little bit more open, but we see the first smite coming here. Boxcars again. A D6 smite comes through for 5 damage. And,
3 more wounds.
ooh, man, this Demon Prince has dealt 5 damage to himself in this first psychic phase. Certainly not ideal, but it's a heck of a lot better than double ones.
Tzeentch is treacherous, man.
Yeah, it really is. So a explosive start, I would say, to the beginning of this first psychic phase. Definitely giving Teddy a brief moment of pause, trying to figure out, okay, am I going to need to make some changes how I'm supporting this flank?
Exactly. That's what you get for playing Heretic.
I need to heal a demon.
All right.
You took too many
So,
wounds. It does go
looking
off on
to,
There was another 6.
D3 back for
all right,
2.
looks like he's able to regrow D3 wounds back on that Demon Prince there, so he's able to heal 2. And we're going to transition now over to the rest of the Psychers. We'll see here if warp time is going to be leveraged on this first turn. I don't see that there's a ton of repositioning that he would be looking for, unless he thinks he can close the gap on maybe another Onager or something like that with a Demon Prince. But exposing his characters with the amount of value that he shows, oh my goodness!
Dice are loaded.
Wow.
All right,
And
well,
another 3 damage.
we're gonna have to start calling that the double barn.
Wow.
Yeah. So another 3 mortal wounds coming down here.
The barn doors open.
Yeah.
3
wow.
out of 4 spells.
I don't think I've ever seen 3 perils in a row before in a game like that.
Yikes.
Once again, though, better to get the power off at least than to perils on the double
And it
ones.
does not go off.
All
We're
right.
just gonna give Boone and Zinch to this unit.
Looks like Teddy's going to be kicking a Boon of Tzeentch over to the Zangors.
So you're more familiar with Chaos. When you're looking at a situation where your psychic phase puts you where you have to use one of your psychic spells turn 1 to heal,
Yeah.
what does that do to your game plan for the rest of the psychic phase?
Well, so to be honest with you, this is higher variance than I've seen. It looks like he does get the boon off the D3 chart here. That's going to up the Zangors to T5.
Okay.
Another good benchmark for him. That means if they're getting return shooting from the Rangers, it'll be a little tougher for them to get damage through. So he is able to buff the durability on that unit a bit. But to answer your question, you know, when you go into the beginning of a psychic phase like this one, right, a very heavy psychic phase coming
Right.
out of this Thousand Suns list, you want to pick the points of or the spells that are the most important to you that turn, and that's what you're focused on.
Sure.
You've got your primary psychic phase, you've got your secondary part of the psychic phase, and I think for him, that smite that he cast was probably a part of the secondary.
Sure.
And it with the amount of demon princes he has, the fact that he's got Armon in this list and he's got Magnus, he's probably got a couple of psychic powers worth of wiggle room. It looks like we've got another smite coming out here on that same unit on the left side, and with 3 mortal wounds, it looks like that was enough to finish that unit. All right, we've got a bolt of change coming in on the Dune Crawler here, so starting to see some of the offensive part of the psychic phase coming to fruition.
And does not get it.
And it looks like it does not go off with a roll of a 4 there, looking for an 8.
Then he's going to super smite.
All right, Magnus casting his smite now onto that front ranger squad.
Reroll
And
one because he is Magnus.
he's going to reroll the ones
So
because
it
he's
is
Magnus, and that
7,
smite
so it's only D6
with
mortal wounds.
the Thousand Stones roll, they don't suffer that penalty when they're casting multiple smites, so it does go off. And because it's Magnus, that was a D6, so that's 3 dead rangers. Very powerful.
It's
psychic
so
phase.
strong.
Yeah.
The ability to ignore the penalty for smite spam.
Yeah, not to mention the extra 6 inches.
Yep.
So these Thousand Suns characters this turn casting at 24. All right, so warp time coming in on Magnus here. Goes off, and I think we're about to see just how defensive
And away he goes.
Teddy plans to be outside of line of sight for a lot of the things on the far side of the table. It's a great sequencing there. He got his offense done, and then just dips back, treating it almost like a fire and fade out of Eldar. So we're moving our way towards the last couple of princes here. Looking for a free reroll, which he picked up there. And without any more range for smite, Teddy progresses into his shooting phase. And now we're in the charge phase.
So while he's sorting out his charges, something to stop and consider. He fires and fades Magnus effectively, puts him in the back. There's nothing else back there. And he's got a Death Company drop coming in on him, so is he going to keep it that way for turn 2?
Yeah, I mean, the Death Company do throw a lot of attacks, but I can't imagine them, especially with Weaver up on Magnus, them doing much damage. It'll be interesting to see, though, if Eddie's going to try and get aggressive. We're seeing the Overwatch here, though, coming out of the AdMech. It looks like, based on the fact that he's overwatching with Stubbers here, there was a multi-charge declared, so the Onager is a part of this charge. And so we're seeing this come through. It doesn't appear that he declared the robots. I think they're outside of 12, but with a pilot in and a consolidate, it's possible that by activating a fight twice, even though he won't be able to throw any attacks at them, he'd be able to wrap one.
Does the 7 doesn't make it? So the 7 doesn't make it.
Yeah, so the 7 does not make it, but he can choose to keep that 5 and give himself a pretty good shot. Does not steal the command point, but there's a 9, and that's a 10-inch with the instrument. He's going to get there off of that charge.
He's in.
And if you notice, so here he's got the larger, the new bases on the Zangors, right? And so they're just wide enough to where he's not going to be able to fit in between these Rangers, which is a big plus. For Eddie here, the last thing he would want is for these Zangors to already be running in between the Rangers and getting onto that Onager, getting all of that 10 inches. Instead, that 10-inch charge really becomes about a 9-inch move. And he's going to have to do some damage before he can move past this front unit of Rangers. But that's a lot of Zangors.
Yep.
And they're going to deal a lot of damage.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see if he's able to get enough distance to be able to tag that robot.
So if he can make it to the Castellan, and I don't want to try to doomsay anything, but if he makes it to the Castellans and he locks him up, even for just a turn, the game has almost wrote itself at that point.
Oh, he's blown it wide open at that point. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that is a massive turn 1 swing.
Yeah.
So that would be absolutely devastating for Eddie if that happens through this turn. But he's got to get there first.
Yep.
So we'll see. It looks like he found a pocket in between 2 of the deployed Ranger squads without getting within an inch there to fit in that gap. So he's able to rotate around. Once again, not get as much damage or distance as he would like.
Right.
But still positioning himself close enough to where, at the very least, he's going to be able to wrap this Dune Crawler.
Yep.
And if those Zangors are back there and can't be shot, the Death Company is really Eddie's only option
And he's
push
got
the
to drop
Zangors
him in
off.
his own backline.
Yeah, and that takes all of the rest of the potential pressure off of Magnus.
Well, he still has the Dragoons.
Oh, that's
and
a good point.
The
I'd almost
Dragoons
completely forgot.
the Dragoons will make pretty quick work of the Zangors if they get hot dice on the explosions.
Yeah,
So.
you know, an interesting point about the Psychic Phase. He did cast Weaver on Magnus. Maybe that was just a plan B in case the warp time failed. Because with Magnus being back in that corner, he's not going to be making much use out of that Weaver of Fates, and these Zangors would love a 4-up invuln save right now.
I would almost be willing to bet he was more worried about failing the charge and levied it to. I would rather Magnus be more survivable.
It's good to build in redundancy,
Here we go.
you know, at moments like that. But we're about to see this first Zangor volley. And because we're playing against Imperium, these Zangors are going to get their death to the False Emperor. And here we go. So plenty of hits. I don't believe he's got himself in range of the Demon Prince here, but they are prescienced, which means every 5 you see on your screen right there is triggering death to the False Emperor. So just pulling the ones here. So it's not only all of those dice, but also I believe he said it was an additional 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So an absolutely massive combat here coming out of these Zangors. I think it's safe to say these Rangers probably aren't going to make it, but we'll see here.
You have no faith in the Emperor.
So I'm needing 3s to win. I'll roll out the 14 extra hit after these ones.
I may have played Knights at ATC, but I was brought up as a Chaos player, and I love seeing some Zangors throw down. So pretty good number of 1s and 2s here. Eddie can't be too sad with that wound roll. It's a heck of a lot of dice, that's for sure, but these are all going to be 5-ups for these Rangers, so we'll see what happens here. Teddy not even considering splitting the damage here. He just wants to make sure that there's no chance this Ranger squad survives, and that'll do it. So he's only got 6 attacks going into that Ranger unit to the far right here. That's kind of wrapping around the back of what's being bubble wrapped. So just a few attacks coming at these guys, but really the most important part there was getting to the Dune Crawler. And I would not at all be surprised if he elects to fight twice to get that extra movement.
Okay. Yeah. Hitting on 2s, 5s and 6s.
All right, hitting on 2s here.
That's 2 more.
2 extra attacks.
That will be hit, but it does not generate any more.
7.
And needing 3s.
7 hits off 6 attacks, not bad.
So you have 4 wounds, sir.
All right, 4 saves at 5-ups on these Rangers. And he makes 1, so 3 Rangers die. And it looks like he's going to pull that unit out of combat. Wants to make sure, anticipating that Teddy's going to go ahead and take advantage of this fight twice. He probably doesn't want that whole unit to die. And here we see the consolidate.
Doesn't seem like he's going to make it into the bots.
Well, if he fights twice, if he kills the Dune Crawler, then he's going to get a consolidate move. And he may be able to tag it, but it's going to be close. And there's no guarantee that Dune Crawler is going to go down here. It looks like he's not going to get the full squad into the vehicle. Teddy making the choice here to trail back so that he can tag that objective. He probably could have given himself a little bit of extra distance here, but he may also be trying to box out that corner so that that flank is safer from the Death Company.
Yeah.
Although, like we said, at this point, it's looking like the Deco are going to have to come in and try and clear out these Angors on Eddie's first turn.
Which it's not ideal, but it's not exactly world-ending.
Right.
So.
All right, so we saw the Dune Crawler crack back there. No damage, and Teddy has elected to fight twice. So we're going to see another pile-in move here.
10, 12, 14, so 24 attacks. 2, 4, 6.
And it looks like Teddy is moving to throw attacks, so maybe missing a few extra inches of movement he could be getting here. We'll have to see if that ends up biting him. But a lot of damage coming through. 24 attacks in on the Dune Crawler. Pulling 1s and adding dice for those 6s and 5s. Looks like he's got 4.
All hits, and I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 extra attacks.
6 extra attacks coming in, so he's going to pull those ones and then add in 6 extra dice.
Reroll that one to Scott, and they all hit.
All right, now those don't continue to explode, but that was 6 additional hits, so he's got to feel pretty good about
But he's winning on 5s here.
Yeah, they are winning on 5s. Strength 4 against T7. Interesting that he didn't choose to Veterans of the Long War here. But decent amount of damage. Looks like he would have picked up an extra 3. An extra 3 wounds if he had Veterans. So not a massive difference, but we'll see how much damage he can put on that Dune Crawler here.
1 damage apiece.
Okay.
And at -1, it looks like 3 of those are going to go through. We see Teddy just moving these gobs of dice in and out of the box for these Zangors.
My turn. I did get first blood.
You did?
Yep. And right now, we're just waiting. I did kill 2 so far. So I did kill 1 and hold 1, so I get for that one. So it is your turn, sir.
All right, so it looks like that is going to be the end of the combat there. We'll see how much more movement Teddy was able to get out of the Zangors. It looks like there may still be an opening on the backside for that Dune Crawler to fall back. So potentially a missed opportunity there. If these Zangors can be shot at, that's going to make this a much easier to deal with threat.
Absolutely.
Than it would have been if they were able to wrap.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a problem for the Dune Crawler to fall back. From what I can see from here, he seems pretty out in the open on the backside. So what that's going to do is it's not even going to put the pressure to bring in the Death Company. It's up, and there he goes.
Yep, and there's the fallback we were expecting. So he did turn off one of the neutrons, which is no small thing. But he absolutely would have preferred to turn off those robots.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting into the bottom of turn 1. Eddie, playing the AdMech here, has moved into to his movement phase, and he's it looks like he's rebuilding his wall. You know, he wants to make sure, even if by some chance these Zangors are able to live through the end of the turn, he still wants to have a little bit of space to box out. Perhaps, trying to make sure that if Magnus tries to warp time and YOLO his way in, he's still got a line to box out. And so it looks like actually on the left side of that combat, more towards the center of the table, Teddy did tag another unit. Once again, did not wrap those, so they're going to have the ability to fall back.
So one of the things to notice here is that Teddy only got 1 unit. Yep. He didn't kill anything in the shooting phase. He almost killed his own Demon Prince, but he didn't kill anything in the shooting phase. Do you get a point if you kill your own guy with perils?
No. It says an enemy model specifically, but that'd be one cheeky way to get the job done.
Just bring a bunch of Primaris Psychers from the guard.
So he did actually kill 1 other Ranger unit on the far side with the smites.
Okay.
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
he was able to get kill 2. He 2 kill points. He may still be able to pull out kill more this turn. It's going to take a heavy amount of focus firepower to take down that full Zangor unit. And with all 3 of the Poxmark units being at 19, it's going to be tough if Eddie has to dedicate all of those robots shooting at the Zangors for him to kill a full 19 Poxmarkers with the rest of his army.
I'd really like to see what he's going to do with the Dragoons here. The Dragoons, or even considering bringing in the Death Company.
Yeah, it looks like he is checking his spacing on the back here to see what he can fit. And and we hear Teddy reminding Eddie that he put down both the -1 hit and the +1 into the invuln save for Magnus, so he is 3++ with -1 to hit. But Eddie thinking through his options here. So if you're in Eddie's shoes, are you concerned about Magnus this turn, or
no.
Okay?
Not even a little. The Demon Prince is already softened up, and the opening from the Death Company is just as wide in the backfield for the Demon Prince as it is for Magnus. Magnus is buffed. He's in the far back part of the field. There's a lot of resources involved in buffing him and warp timing him. Um, but at the same time, Magnus is never not a threat.
That's a fair point. Yeah, he's a scary model when he's on the table.
Oh, he's incredible. But at the end of the day, if I have to choose between trying to take a swing at Magnus and almost assuredly killing.
All right, so it looks like we've got some command points coming in here. Teddy going ahead and just resetting the cards for his psychic powers, flipping them back over to note that they have not yet been used. Just another good way to visually represent the actions he's taken on the table here. And here come the Dragoons. All right, so I don't know that that's officially where they're going to be placed. I think Eddie's planning on taking some measurements here and picking the spot where he absolutely wants them to be. But it looks like he's looking to pressure that flank that you mentioned,
Yep.
Where that weakened Demon Prince is. There is a bit of Poxwalker screening there, but with the amount of space between those walkers, he may be able to get in on a combat with this Prince this turn,
Yep.
especially if he's able to dedicate some shooting at that specific unit that is wrapping that Demon Prince.
Absolutely. So the thing here is that you have no short supply of shooting for the AdMech. He knows he's at best gonna tie for the number of kills. In a pie in the sky world, he gets kill more, but realistically, the Zangors go, the Demon Prince goes, and you put some work into some of the Poxwalkers. A huge shot from the Onager. We're talking massive damage on Magnus out of sheer dumb luck. Could do a world of hurt, but Demon Princes are what, 9 wounds? So
Demon Princes are 8.
8, yeah. So you can't even pick those out of the sky.
Yep.
So you look at your target variance and what's available to you. He's looking at 2 things coming down. So it looks like the Death Company are coming down to handle the Zangors. So then it becomes, do you can't leave all of those Zangors to that Death Company. They're too far spread out. There's no way to consolidate into enough of them to get rid of all of them. So something has to shoot them.
Yeah.
So you're going to see the Castellans shooting the Zangors. They're going to disappear. With Call right there with rerolls, I can't see it not happening.
And I do.
All right, so it looks like Eddie choosing to use the ability to get those mortal wounds on the shooting this turn, as you expected. Teddy is able to pull a command point off of him for doing that. But the robots are coming, and we've got the first 54 shots, it looks like, coming at the Zangor squad.
So what we just saw in the combat phase where all those dice just got dumped into the mat, you're about to see that again. They're coming back. This is one of my favorite things about playing AdMech, is just getting to go absolutely ham with the dice.
Just throwing gobs of dice.
I hope that's not his roll. Is he using that as his roll? Okay.
6.
Just all of these,
Yes.
and then we're gonna re-roll because of Call. Definitely, both of these lists have some units in them that drop pretty significant just weight of dice. All right, here's the re-rolls. And with that re-roll, he's looking pretty healthy on this first batch of 40. There's still more dice to come. There's going to be another 18.
Yep.
Excuse me. All right, so he's going to roll these to completion here, it looks like, and then we'll see the second batch.
So you need 3s.
All right, so we're looking for 3s here for the wounds, and he has got plenty of them. Pulling a fair number of 1s and 2s, but
So you got.
I'll just take this dice in there.
So well, you got how many more wounds first? 1,
you got
2, 3, 4, 5 altogether.
all right, so 5
5
more
and
wounds
5
come through.
And, so I got 5.
And then all
and
those are
those are
saves.
saves.
Minus 1, 0 cover.
Okay.
Minus 2.
All right, so
2 and they're all 1 damage.
I got
Teddy here, and this is a great benefit of having the dice tray when you're at a tournament like this, is that you can just re-roll the dice that your opponent rolled.
Yep.
All right, so he's gonna pull the wounds here.
So 9, 13.
Gonna count those up.
Okay.
13
And we got
dead
16.
from that volley.
Does that include the mortal wounds?
It looks like it, yeah. So it was the dice that he pulled plus an additional 5. Oh, 14 actually. So it was 9 failed saves plus 5 mortal wounds, and here's the last 14 shots. All right, rerolls coming through. That was a great first roll there. Yeah, only a few misses here. And once again, wounding on
And
threes.
again. All right, so those all wound. There's a 2 mortal, so we got
That's 2 more.
Yep.
So 2 more mortals. So that's 2 more dead Zangors. And here's the saves.
So 1, 2,
And a rough batch of
6 more
saves there. So 6 more. So 2 mortal wounds plus another 6. That's another 8 on top of the initial 13 or 14. So we're looking at over 20 Zangors killed
So these guys
Yep.
over
from
here
that
shooting
volley. And Teddy
spots.
pulling in such a way here where he wants to stay on that objective.
hit.
He's trying to make sure he gets that hold more. But that does mean he's keeping an angle for these Death Company to get in with a charge.
Yep.
They're within 9 of call, so they get the reroll. Hits.
And needing 5 spells.
6s do mortal wounds. And their toughness
5 right now.
5. Okay, nope.
Maybe the heavy stubber coming in.
Yeah, it looks like he may just be shooting some Rangers here.
I do. 'Cause I need to shoot the other 16 over there.
Go ahead and you want to go ahead and shoot the
Yeah, let's
robots?
do
Where are you
six.
going to shooting at?
We're gonna shoot at the second squad over the Poxwalkers.
Okay.
Eddie here realizing that he switched over to another unit before resolving the rest of the robot shooting.
Closer.
So
Those units closer.
Teddy says that's totally okay. You declared your intent before you started rolling dice.
So there's
And so here's going to be 36 additional shots, and these are going to be coming at the Poxwalkers. So
I love the
rounding-
fact that that wasn't even all the shots.
Nope. Little over half.
Yep.
Here we go. Another bucket full coming out of the robots. Pulling those misses.
And because any of their footprint is close to call, all of those misses are going to be
All
rerolled.
of those misses. Yep. Yeah, reroll all hits is a phenomenal aura, especially on a unit that it hits on 4s. You know, you get so many extra hits out of that.
Now, can you imagine if they hit on 3s?
Well, you'd be rerolling less, so it's a little less fun.
Their toughness
It's
4.
true.
But
Sure.
yeah, it's a lot of dice.
So he's swimming in 3.
Really great.
All right, 3s here. And a pretty hefty amount of wounds once again.
A lot of 1s and 2s. A lot of 1s and 2s in that roll, but the Poxwalkers are only going to be up on their 5 up anyway. So it's going to be... Oh, and these are still Wrath of Mars.
5 mortals.
So any of the 6s are mortal wounds. So instantly it looked like 5 of them.
Yeah, so it looked like 5 mortals, so he's going to get his feel no pains there. And then we'll see the saves on the rest of them. So
That's a lot of 5s.
yeah, that looked like a pretty good batch of
6.
saves there.
6
Almost
supplies.
half.
So let me see here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I have 5 mortals.
10 there, and then 5
And 5 mortals. That's disgusting resilient. And
So 4
so
more, so
I lost
14
3
total
more.
getting lost out of that unit.
So I lost 3.
4 more, right?
Yeah.
14 out of 19?
14.
14 out of 19 should leave 5
Yeah.
Now, fortunately for him, Poxwalkers are mindless. So,
Right, yeah, so they're not going to be able to kill him around you. You got to kill him to the man if you want to get that kill point.
yep.
So we're going to see in what order Eddie's going to go ahead, or Teddy's going to go ahead and pull here. It looks like he's starting from the back, wants to try and make sure that he maintains the screen with the best visibility for the demon prince there before these dragoons come in and try and get their pound of flesh.
So the Dragoons themselves actually don't have any guns. So that's the best play to make. They're only equipped with the lances.
Now he's still got some ranger shooting,
Mhm.
and still got stubbers coming off the onagers. Looks like he's checking for distance there. So we've got the onager taking its shots. Stubbers going
Reroll
into
for
that
call.
poxwalker.
Needing 5 to wound.
Yep.
And he's on 5s to wound
One.
here.
5
That's
up.
1.
Yeah, made it.
Of course it does.
Saves made.
How many
Every
shots
one of these
versus
saves that he rolls for
Magnus?
that
We got
poxwalker
6.
is going to be very important.
So we need 4.
All right, so we see
I'm going to do
die
the
coming
command
down for the
point
shots here at
to get
Magnus.
back
See if I get it back.
to give the guys +1 to hit. So we're going to hit on 3s as well.
Okay.
Here we
Reroll
go.
plus a call. Thank God.
Call
That was not ideal. But it recovers.
And strength
Now Magnus is a flyer.
Yep.
That-
Which means
That's only on the Icarus array. So on the neutron lasers, they're just on normal 3-ups.
Get the point back, yes, no. And then for the wind, yes.
See if I get it back? No.
So wash.
Yeah.
Yeah, so minus your invuln saves.
Yeah. It's 3 ups, 3 ups, and 3 ups. Made them all.
Shrugs them.
Come at me.
And this is what we were talking about when we were talking about where did the Death Company come down. Magnus is so much not a target 90% of the time. It really comes down to the general playing Magnus. But either way, he's almost impossible to kill.
Yeah, he's once he's got that Weaver up and the marksman hit, it's tough.
Company gonna shoot
Yeah.
their pistols.
Now, for those of you who may be wondering why the Auditor was hitting on threes there,
Nothing.
Teddy went ahead and used a stratagem to up the ballistics
Yeah.
on that model before he shot. That's why he was still over there shooting at Magnus on threes, or hit Magnus on threes. So we see some more ranger shooting, just some small arms fire coming in on the poxwalkers here, trying to chip
2
away
mortals. And
at
nothing.
that bubble
Nothing.
wrap.
They only get 2 mortals and no other wounds?
No, you roll a 6 with a mortal and that's it.
Okay.
Alright, so here we see when the mortal wounds come through,
All right,
replacing the existing damage. So that's 2 more Zangors dead. And this time, Teddy does pull a couple from the back that are going to extend the distance.
Homeboys can't shoot. These guys here.
Alright, so it looks like Eddie just looking for the last couple of decision points with his shooting phase. And it looks like he was able to clear a good chunk of that Poxwalker screen, but there's still a little bit left. Looks like he's got a couple of Rangers that are still got line of sight and range on these Poxwalkers.
Okay. 5 up.
Just 1 wound there, and he makes the save.
They will not die.
Every one of these last few saves that has come through on the Poxwalkers has been absolutely crucial. Even just pulling 1 more model out of that line gives a Dragoon an angle potentially to get to that Demon Prince.
We're going to declare here is it him and the Demon Prince. And then we're going to declare Death Company.
Alright,
Zangors.
so charge is being declared here. Deco coming in the Zangors, and the Dragoons coming into the Poxwalkers and the Demon Prince.
Go ahead.
Looks like he's also going to throw in a couple of extra Rangers just for good measure.
Bring those guys in.
Oh, those actually, I believe, are the attack marines out of the Blood Angels, so a little bit of extra damage. Alright, Deco charge.
9. I will reroll
That
one.
is
Command point, see if we get it back.
Command point reroll.
being command pointed, yep.
And then
Does not get the command point back, but here's the reroll, and he is going to get
Yep,
there.
I got it.
Alright, so Teddy steals a command point there, but the charge is successful, so Deco coming in on the Zangors,
But
or
at
at
what
least what's left.
cost?
Alright, so it looks like there's only 5 Zangors left in that unit. These Deco have a great shot at being able to finish them off. And a couple of extra tactical marines just for good measure.
They get it.
And some rangers as well. Every attack matters when you're trying to make sure you
Absolutely.
finish off that unit.
They have to go. He can't. He cannot afford them to get to the Castellans.
Yeah.
Not make it.
No, not make it. And that's not going to make it either. That's a
Alright, so it looks like the Dragoons fail their charge on the far side.
Over there.
Oh no, I'm sorry, that was for another character charging in on the Zangor unit. Alright, but there's the 9-inch charge that he needs on those Dragoons, so that's a big roll. Really going to be threatening this HQ now. We'll see how much space was left. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to throw attacks at the Demon Prince here in the first volley, but we'll see if we get a heroic intervention.
I don't know. It looks like he's coming into base with the Demon Prince.
Yeah, no, so he was looking to try and jump over the Poxwalker there, and that's not how that one's going
They
to work.
got long legs. They've got ups.
They
I
do,
mean, come
yeah.
on.
It's just hop right over, right?
Yeah,
Little
exactly.
kangaroo jump,
There you go.
but not quite. So the player's looking through the movement here in the combat.
Okay, go ahead.
We're going to do
Um,
3 guys going into him. And then this guy's an attack squad.
So I
now
don't
it looks like based on the spacing,
So
he was able to get those Dragoon bases, just the noses pushed far enough forward to where they're within an inch of the Demon Prince.
2 hits.
So 1 Dragoon going into
Moving
the
on 2s.
Okay.
Poxwalkers.
2 wounds.
Okay, What's the
and
damage?
2 wounds coming through.
3.
The straight 3 or D3?
Let's think so. Let me make sure. I think it's straight 3.
Eddie double checking here the damage profile on the Dragoons.
It's interesting to me that he didn't opt to use the stratagem.
2 each? So
Yeah,
5 ups for the first guy.
it didn't look
5
like it,
ups for the
so
next guy. Makes it.
certainly,
So one guy dies.
you know, potentially missing out on some Tesla opportunity here. He is able to kill 1 more Poxwalker from that unit. But here comes the part of this combat that matters most.
It's a lot of hits.
That is a lot of hits.
2 6s generate
got
2 additional hits.
2 Teslas would have had an additional 5
Yup.
if he'd used the stratagem there.
And on top of the rolls that he had against the Poxwalkers.
And there's strength 8, toughness 7, right?
No, toughness 6.
Toughness
Strength
6.
7.
We need 3s.
All right, so we're looking at 3s to wound here on this Prince.
Nope.
And that looks like a pretty solid wound roll.
That's a
It's
truck
a
full of
lot of attacks coming down on the Prince. Maybe he just knew.
Yeah.
Maybe he just knew he didn't need the
4 ups.
additional attacks.
4 ups. One,
And
two,
on 4 ups here, that is looking like a dead Demon Prince.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 damage.
6 wounds on top of the wounds he had already taken.
Yep.
No, I'll just leave him to die.
Okay.
I'll leave him to die. That'll be fine.
All right, so that's 1 Demon Prince down. You know, we're seeing another example where both players may have left a kind of key target a little closer to the screen than they would have liked.
Yep.
And it's allowed for some opportunities for both players, definitely.
So 10.
All right, so it looks like Teddy electing to interrupt here with the Zangors. Going to see if he can do enough damage to his Death Company to keep his unit alive. We'll see. He's got 3 that can attack into
Hitting
them.
on 2s again.
So 6 attacks. They are still prescienced, so they're still hitting on
Generate
2s.
2 more attacks.
And there's still Death to the False Emperor on those 5, so 2
more
extra
hits.
attacks generated there.
Count. And I
So
wound
we've
on
got
4s.
7 hits, and we're wounding on 4s here.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 wounds at negative
4 wounds, -1. We'll see how well the Deco survived this.
1, I'm sorry.
Holy cow. 4 wounds, -1, right?
All right, here we go. 4 ups,
Oh.
and that's a great batch of saves. So he's going to lose 1 Deco. Likely still is going to have enough damage to be able to get there. But we've got 2 more Zangors that need to fight first, and it looks like they're going to attack into the Rangers.
4, 6 attacks again. Hitting on 2s.
Maybe
moving on
3
threes.
there.
So you.
That was
We'll
all
see when
2s
the
and a
camera
1.
comes back. Huh?
It was all 2s and a 1.
We are at
Yeah.
a 5 up.
All right, so with 5 up saves on the Rangers, it looks like he's going to be pulling 3 bodies from there. Not dead yet, though. The Ranger's still alive. We'll see a few more attacks, not just out of the Deco, but also out of those attack Marines and that Ranger. So we'll see if he can get the job done against these Angors here.
Apparently all you need are 2s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Prescient Angors.
yeah,
Twos
it's
all day.
nuts. It's nuts.
All right. So out of the Death Company here, a pretty healthy number of hits. Let's see how much damage they can do with these chainswords.
Still needing 4s. So I only see 1, 2, 3, 4 wounds.
All right, 4 wounds only coming through on the Deco there.
5 ups. 4 dead.
Eddie may have missed his +1 to wound there. Oh no, actually I'm sorry. The Zangors were buffed up to
Yep.
T5, and so even with the bonus, he was wounding on 4s there. So a couple attacks out of the attack Marines, couple hits, 1 wound.
So if you're Eddie in this situation and you somehow manage to not kill the Zangors, their Death Company, do you pay to fight again?
So that's 8, 2, 4.
It's tough to say.
So the
I
needing
mean,
hit.
he killed the Demon Prince,
hit.
so he got his kill 1.
And they needing 6s.
He did not finish off either of the Poxwalker units, though. Wow, double 6s on that wound roll there.
The barn
Coming
door's
back
open.
into these Dragoons.
Again, let me see if I want to do this. No. I'm going to see if they survive on a 1. No, they're dead.
All right, and Teddy's going to like to take the morale check here and just let the Zangors die. Rather than spend the 2 command points to fearless them here. On the other side, though, the Poxwalkers are fearless. So there's no need to have a morale check there. So that's the Zangor unit down and the Demon Prince down. That's 2 kill points.
Yep.
For Eddie. And if I remember right, we had 2 kill points come out of Teddy as well.
Yep.
So they're gonna split kill.
Now you get 1, 2.
I wonder if that's something that Teddy will regret near the end of the game.
All right.
Yeah,
Because
it's a 1 point swing there.
Yep.
Yeah.
He cost himself the point,
What's the bonus gonna be?
and in
I
the
killed
future
one.
that could, I mean, it only takes one, especially this early.
So you killed
Mm.
1, hold 1,
Mhm.
killed more, and
No. No.
0.
Yeah.
And
Players
that's
totaling
bonus.
up the first turn here.
It's holding more objectives, I guarantee. It's a 4th mission, so.
So we're going through players determining who is holding more objectives here.
So I got 3. So no.
Yeah.
All right.
No
So
one-
All right, so no bonus for
Um,
either player. It
Reaper,
looks
hold
like
them all skill unit with more than 10
the
units,
deco
Yep.
are gonna give
and
an
then
extra
Yep. Well, I got your first blood.
objective.
your first blood,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got old school scored for Teddy.
and
We got
that's it. Okay.
2 Reaper points scored for the Zangors. For Eddie, we've got 1, 2.
No.
I believe there's still a Poxwalker on the objective that is near the Dragoons, and those are going to be OBSEC. So with that,
So those
it
are
looks as though Teddy is going to come away with hold more. Because he's got 1, 2, 3. And the objective there near the center of the table that was closer to Eddie's deployment, he pulled off of that in order to get the extra attacks into the Zangor unit. So Teddy's going to get hold more. And unless I missed some morale checks, it looks like they trade even on kill points. So with that, it's looking like we're going to be at 4 points for Teddy, 4 points for Eddie coming out of the first turn here.
That's a big first turn.
Yeah, coming out even there, the fact that those robots are freed up and the deep strike threat is gone, it's going to be very difficult for Teddy to get pressure down on those robots. And every turn they're left alone to do what they want, the odds of Teddy winning this game go down pretty significantly.
Absolutely. And it looks like Magnus has opted to go after the Dragoons rather than go and try for a warp time straight into the Castellans.
Yeah, I think that's the right play. You know,
Yeah.
it's higher odds of success to actually get there.
Yeah.
You know, the Overwatch from those robots is no joke.
Yeah.
What we may see is Teddy just advancing his line forward one more time, trying to get it every inch he can so that he can be throwing a good number of smites
Yep.
into the rest of those Ranger squads, the rest of that screen. That way he'll have one full turn where Eddie's backline is exposed to the psychic phase before he has to charge in.
Yep.
So he's definitely still in this game. There's a very tight 4-4 coming out of turn 1. And as Eddie moves into his movement phase here, we're going to see exactly how he decides to prioritize his targets.
I don't know that we saw what we got for Canicles for turn 2.
I did not catch that. The players may have done it off camera.
Okay.
I'm going to check in for a quick update on secondaries and the Canicles from the table.
So it looks like Armin's going to move over to help Magnus. It seems like the focus is going to be to try to use psychic powers to do the majority of the damage to the Dragoons, which is very smart. Heading into the rest of the movement phase, it looks like the Poxwalkers are just going to shuffle forward.
Advance for 8.
Got a 4-inch advance there. That's going to give him another objective on an OBSEC unit, which is great.
Yes. I have old school. I have gangbuster on this unit, and I have headhunter.
I have Reaper, Kingslayer, and Headhunter, and I got the
Just
first
letting him
one
get through the movement phase here real quick before we move into the psychic phase.
Magnus.
I'm sorry, it was Reaper, Kingslayer, and Recon?
Reaper, Kingslayer, Headhunter.
Headhunter. All right, thank you. So you scored 1 Headhunter there, right? Nice.
So the biggest focus here, given that we don't have much of a shooting phase to speak of for this army, is objective control. And that's what you're seeing with the control from the Poxwalkers and Typhus. That's going to continue to keep the toughness up and keep a very durable unit on a multi-objective scenario.
I got one. It was just a model, Squad 19.
Okay. Looks like we're wrapped up with that unit, getting ready to move into the rest. So it actually looks like we're coming back with some of the Poxwalkers. And that's interesting. There's a lot of faith in the frontline unit there in that Demon Prince.
Yeah, he may feel as though with a lot of the chaff, right, a lot of the Rangers have been cleared out. Really, the only threat left on the table that has the ability to chew through the Poxwalkers is the robots.
Sure.
And even if the whole Poxwalker unit dies, if the robots have to elect to shoot in order to do that, they've still done their job.
Exactly.
But quick update on the secondaries for this game, because I think this is going to come into play pretty significantly on this turn. It may explain why Magnus is where he is. Teddy has taken gangbusters on that Dragoon unit. So that is a big priority target for him. He potentially has a shot at a very high point value turn.
Gotcha.
Right here.
That makes a lot more sense.
So old school, gangbusters, and headhunter. Those are the 3 secondary objectives that Teddy has here. And with that, he scored 1 secondary point on the first turn. So the way that gangbusters works here is you choose a unit in your opponent's army, and for every model you kill from that, or every model you kill based on the amount of wounds they have in that unit, you score victory points on your secondary mission. But we're getting into the psychic phase here.
That situation allows him to max out gangbusters in 1 assault.
That's correct. Yeah, but a psychic phase plus the charge could get there. So we are getting some mortal wounds coming in. All right, moving to the next psyker here. All right.
Magnus, the 3+ invul save.
All right, Weaver Fate's being cast by Armon onto Magnus. A 2 and a 1 there.
For the Magnus, it's 3. Then I'm going to command point this one. So that's a 7.
All right.
It does go off.
So that was a Magnus reroll into a command point, and thanks to Armon's +1 to cast, just barely gets that Weaver Fates off. So Magnus once again gonna have that 3++. Prescience also coming down on Magnus. Not normally relevant, but because of Death to the False Emperor, can result in a pretty healthy amount of extra attacks here.
That's a 10. So D3.
2 rerolls and a +1 for when it absolutely, positively must happen.
And he needed all of it. He needed absolutely every bit of those rerolls. All right, so moving right along. We've got a 1 and a 3, so an attempt to heal there. Some of those mortal wounds that came out of the perils on the first turn, unsuccessful.
That's an 11, so that's the big smite. So.
But we've got a big smite.
For 1.
Oh.
D6, but rolls a 1 on the damage.
And he can't reroll because he's already reused his psychic roll.
That's right. He has already used the reroll for this phase. But 1 point of damage coming down there.
That's one of those demoralizing moments. You get the big roll, right?
Well, you have that high from rolling the big smite, and then that immediate low from rolling a 1 on the die.
See, AdMech don't have that problem. We just have 1s and 0s.
So. Yeah, that's true. It looks like the players right now are trying to determine who is the valid smite target here. You do need line of sight in order to actually target the unit with a smite. So trying to determine if the Dune Crawler or if the attack marines are the valid units. 10 on the smite there. It's going to go through rolling a 2, so that's 1 mortal wound onto the Dune Crawler. All right, over to Magnus. Here's where the real fun begins. All right, big boy smite coming out first.
That's
All right, so that's a 9 plus Magnus's bonuses, so that's an 11. That's a 2d6, and that is 10 mortal wounds.
That's
Couple of ones early, but if you were gonna get the extra damage anywhere, that was the place.
That almost kills 2 of them.
Yeah, so it kills the first, and it looks like it takes the second down to 1 wound.
Incredible psychic.
Yeah, definitely making Magnus's work in the combat step a little easier.
Doom Bolt.
All right, Doom Bolt coming out of Magnus.
3 mortal wounds for 3.
And there's a big 3 on the mortal wounds there from the Doom Bolt. Now, interestingly, as Teddy is doing this, it makes the amount of damage he needs to do in the combat step easier, but it is also making his charge longer. So there's a Bolt of Change. He may still have a Warp Time pocketed on a Prince. I'm not sure if he's resolved all of the rest of his Psychers yet. But that's a second Dragoon down before the combat even starts. So halfway through that Dragoon unit. All right, Psychic phase is done. Looks like we've got charge coming in off of Magnus. Command point rerolls to 1 and gets a 6. That was absolutely crucial. Eddie checks to see if he gets to steal that command point, but no go. So here comes Magnus in to see if he can put down the rest of this Dragoon squad.
So let's go over Magnus's profile real quick.
Okay. I like doing this.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's give people an idea of what's coming at the robot chickens.
Okay.
7 hits on 2s.
I'm going to pull up the Thousand Suns book and I'm going to read this verbatim. But as this is happening, here come the attacks. So, 5s and 6s. Oh my goodness. All right, that is going to be 5 extra attacks off of those rolls there. Getting an extra one off of the 5 thanks to the prescience. Rerolling 1s thanks to himself. That is a boatload of hits. And we're wounding on 2s here. Magnus swinging at strength 14.
So you have...
And that is 5, 10?
6, 8, 10 wounds.
10 wounds coming through at -4 on those Dragoons.
So invuln saves.
Oh, yeah.
And they're dead.
That's probably enough.
They're dead, Jim.
Yeah, they are definitely gone. Magnus showing that when you need it done right, sometimes you got to strap up and show people while you're still the boss and go out there and get it done right.
Yep. So for anyone who doesn't know,
So you got to do the damage for 1 for the...
weapon and ballistic skill 2+.
Get a save, they save.
Strength 8, T7,
Takes 1.
18 wounds, 7 attacks, leadership 10, 3 up armor save. Because he's Weavered, he also has a 3++, and he swings his weapon, the Blade of Magnus, at strength ×2, -4, flat 3 damage. Also,
so that was the potential for
cheeky little
30 damage.
Yes. Also, cheeky little bit, if Magnus kills a character in combat, he makes it into a chaos pod.
Yep.
Because Zinch, that's why.
But he doesn't have the points for it, I don't think.
Oh yeah, you have to have reserve points.
We looked into that
you're
earlier
right,
for
you're
the
right.
plague for the Poxwalkers, which is a shame. I feel like if you have that kind of flavor in your army, you should leave a
you just
pocket
have
of
to,
points.
yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm
Either
gonna
way, though, that was a very important
yeah.
combat phase for Teddy, and he got what he needed.
Yep. That doubles Teddy's score.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah, just by itself.
Yeah. And he needed it too. There's not much other spots on the table where he could have killed a unit that turn.
Oh yeah.
So that was very important for Teddy. He's going to get kill 1, hold 1 out of that. He's going to score some big gangbuster points. And you know, he's in a position here where unless Eddie can clear out these Poxwalkers without the robots, pretty mitigated shooting phase here. Now, I think what we may end up seeing is some split fire on the robots between Magnus and the Poxwalkers, but we'll have to see how Eddie decides to pick his targets.
Yeah, depending on the ranges here, So when you look at this army and you think about Adeptus Mechanicus, they're a shooting army, they're a gunline army, but there's not a lot of shooting left. Like because he doesn't have them broken up into groups to utilize Wrath of Mars better, he leaves himself in a position where he has to declare ahead of time how many are going where. So he may not need 4 robots to do the job when 2 robots could have done the job.
Right.
And you're not going to know that coming into this situation. There's a difference between splitting one unit's fire and having this unit over here fire and then this unit over here fire.
Yeah.
Very different things.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be interesting to see how he sequences his shooting phase here. If you're in his shoes, you know, how do you think you choose your order on the shooting here? You've got a handful of units of Rangers left. You've got your Onagers left, and you've got your robots.
So it entirely depends.
We are going to.
I don't know that they even remember to roll Canicles this turn. So
We're probably about to find out. We'll see
Yeah,
if he's
yeah.
rerolling once during the shooting phase. It's possible he chose.
it's possible as
Yeah,
well.
it's possible he chose. You know, he did roll it on the first turn, I believe, with call on the table. But he may just wanted the guarantee here. Although with call on the table, getting the rerolls anyway, and basically all of his AdMech units in range. Probably just looking for some cover here. All right, so 1 wound
One dead.
on this first little batch here.
Shots from the big gun. We're going to command point that. Here's the reroll.
So it looks like he is splitting the stubbers from the neutron. So neutron going at Magnus, stubbers going at the Poxwalker units.
You do that this turn?
Yep.
All right, so -1 to hit here, but he is flying, re-rolling, so we're hitting on 4 ups.
Clean.
Yeah. Great rune wool there. Definitely wanted to see that. And 2 fails on Magnus. He's going to command point 1 of them. 1 gets through for 2 damage.
It's minimum 3
Or
damage.
3. You're right. 3 damage. It's a D6, not D3.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
So Magnus is going to go roll down to 15 here. Still pretty healthy. We'll see the second Dune Crawler coming in here. It looks like these are the stubbers.
So one thing to mention on the neutron laser, no matter what, the minimum it can do is 3 damage.
That's right. It says 1s and 2s count as 3, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. So it's a D6 weapon with a minimum damage profile of 3.
All right, so 1 more Poxwalker picked up there, and here are the neutron shots at Magnus. Thanks to that -1, that 3 is not a hit, so only 1 wound getting through this time, and the save is good.
It's such a crapshoot with Magnus. The invuln save is such an overpowering force. It makes it hard to want to target him, makes it hard to even want to engage him.
Yeah, without something like a Jinx, without something like a Death Hex or a
Yep.
Null Zone, it can be really difficult to chip through Magnus's invuln save. So we see Magnus is able to make it out of that first volley with only taking 3 damage.
18 shots of that squad over there.
The robots are targeting here, and it looks like 4.
And to the main squad.
Yes, 4 robots going at Magnus, 1 robot going at the Poxwalkers. So definitely investing heavily into Magnus here.
It'd be interesting to see did we pop the stratagem.
Not that I saw there were a couple of dice rolled, but we'll see as he is. Yes, and the players are discussing the mortal wounds now, so it looks like that stratagem was popped. So the 6s you see on your screen here, those are going to translate to mortal wounds. And here's another batch. All right, so 3 more barns showing, it looks like.
So their toughness 4.
Their toughness 5.
5. So we need 3s anyway.
And here come the wounds.
Oh, it looks like these shots are actually at the Poxwalkers.
Oh,
Alright.
So you got 1.
they're dead, Jim.
Yeah, wounding on 3s here.
6 mortal wounds.
So 6 mortal wounds coming through.
When you're Teddy in this situation, do you even roll that?
Oh yeah, you always take your field of pains. Nurgle has blessed you with them. You have
I see.
You have to.
So is
use
this the fresh unit that he's firing at?
It would appear so. I think
Okay.
he picked off just a couple of them with the stubbers.
It's like 6 saves.
Okay. And I got
Yeah,
6
so a healthy amount of saves there, but that's a lot of dead poxwalkers.
Yeah, see, I thought we were firing at one of the fragmented poxwater, and that's why I was like, do you even roll that, or you just pick those up?
That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, when you're at full strength, you definitely want to roll it. Oof, no saves on the mortal wounds there. It looks like that is close to all of them. But as we discussed, the robots have shot.
Yep.
And the demon princes have not been targeted.
Well, we're not done yet.
All right.
So
Wounds.
the demon princes have to
Alright,
close
here's
the gap.
wounds here.
Mortals.
A couple of mortal wounds coming through.
So we got 2 mortals and then those guys.
Oh,
survives, and you got 2 more mortals.
All right.
So.
So
1, 2,
3
3,
saved. It
4,
looks like
5.
5 get through. So from the looks of it, what he decided to do was split the robot shooting between 2 different poxwalker units.
oh, I thought he was firing at Magnus.
So did I. Yeah, when he was pointing to the side, I thought that's what he was indicating, but it appears as though he was targeting the center and the far right poxwalker squad.
Did he wipe both squads then? Maybe the goal was to go for kill more.
Potentially, yeah. It's I don't believe he got the full units yet, but he does still have some rangers to shoot. We'll see if he's able to get any more through. All right, 13 died on that volley there.
Wow.
Looks like there's just a couple left.
Volley. And then 5 more.
Actually, just speaks to the resilience of the poxwalkers as a whole. Not many units take that kind of damage and walk away.
Well, it looks like the players are talking through the amount of damage that was done to that unit on the first turn. May have been a miscount as those were getting pulled, and by the sound of it, it looks like he did in fact get the full unit.
Okay.
All right, coming into the closing quarter of Eddie's second shooting phase here. Let's see how much more damage he's able to output.
We could have booked this match as the shooting phase versus the psychic phase.
Just about.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a little bit of combat. When the Gores were on the table.
Yeah.
There was a little
Well,
more.
and the Dragoons.
True.
So.
All right, pretty healthy round of hits there. Looking for 6s to wound. Or for the mortal wounds, rather. All right, so pretty hefty amount of saves here.
Did pretty good with it.
They're dead. Yep.
Yeah, just about half, but that is going to be enough to finish the unit.
For the other squad. Well, that was the squad here.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's
squad's
gone.
gone. Yep.
And now I'm shooting the last 18 at the other squad over there.
All right, so the last 18 shots coming in.
Eddie did an amazing job of splitting these attacks and making sure that he utilized the Castellans. This is what we talked about early on. Castellans that can sit still and just dump a payload are absolute havoc.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing not only are there 3 additional robots,
Yeah.
but they're also not moving. So there's actually 8 additional robots compared to the shooting we saw in the first game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are definitely seeing that offense come to bear here.
One more. So 1 survived.
Okay.
So that's 2.
So while Teddy maxed
4,
out
6,
gangbusters on
8,
that one
10.
grouping,
10 dead.
I would say coming into the next turn that Teddy might be the one on the back foot here. He's still got the Demon Princes left, but he's got to charge those robots, and he's going to run headlong into that Overwatch.
Yeah, I think a big part of this next turn is going to come down to how much work he can get out of his psychic phase before he has to declare those charges.
Yep.
You know, Magnus is in a position where he's got an angle to come in on the flank there towards the bottom center of the screen. Whether or not he can get closer to the robots than that Ranger squad that's still there, though,
That's the trick.
that's going to be tough. So we may see him push up here. It looks like we are going to go ahead and move into Teddy's movement phase.
They're gonna shoot their pistols at that squad.
One thing I want to give all the players we've ran into so far kudos for, they are playing very quickly. At the end of the day, people don't, you think, well, 3 hours. Well, it's a 2,000-point army. There's a lot of rules, a lot of phases, and everybody's keeping really good time. And that, again, comes down to communication between the players.
2 wounds.
Absolutely.
No, 2 dead.
So we're seeing here, it looks like going into the top of 3, the score coming out of turn 2. We've got Teddy being able to kill one, hold one. He, I don't believe, holds more at the end of that turn. Because Eddie was able to move some of his units back up to tag objectives, so they split holding. I believe Eddie killed more.
What? What did you kill in the end of your turn? You didn't kill.
Oh, it looks like
Oh, you did one.
Yeah.
there may be.
But I have two.
So there is still a Poxwalker in that center building. He
Oh,
didn't quite get all the way
wow.
through it. So that is going to give Teddy kill more.
Yeah, but you hold more.
Hold more.
Yep.
So you killed one. You hold, still hold one.
But
Right?
with the damage he was able to do,
Two.
knocking a unit off of an objective.
Killed more. So 3-3, and neither one of us got the bonus.
So 3-3 on primary that turn.
And you
Wow.
hold the game buster.
Headhunter
All right.
and Gangbuster.
Yeah, spin and fill.
This is absolutely going to come down to tertiary objectives.
No, headhunters, because I just got one.
Right.
I just got one.
All right. So on the secondaries there, 1 Headhunter point picked up by Teddy, and 4 Gangbusters. So he scores 5 points on secondaries that turn, and Eddie picks up an extra Reaper point. But he's positioned himself pretty well to pick up these last 2.
Yep.
These last 2 Reaper points, with both of those Pocket squads barely left alive. It may come down to whether or not he's able to get his Kingslayer points on Magnus before the end of this game.
And that's a tough nut to crack.
It absolutely is.
Anything within 7 inches that dies, that's an infantry, that's not a death guard, spawn 4 guys.
So we're just totaling up the final score as we get into the top of Teddy's turn here. Get those updated for you here in just a second.
It's in my truck.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
It is called the Dead Rising
Okay,
again.
so what does it do now?
Anything within 7 inches of the Poxwalker, which I'm going to nominate this group.
Now, I can't lie, I'm a little disappointed. Teddy told us before we went in that if he was one of the feature casts, he was going to wear a Deadpool mask.
This was yesterday while we were setting up. He was in here getting a practice game, and the first thing he said to me when we walked through the door was, I left my Deadpool mask back at the studio."
That's a shame.
I'm gonna make my roll, see if I steal that.
That's a shame.
But we're here into the psychic phase at the top of 3. And with the couple of command points that Teddy's been able to pick up throughout the game using that Thousand Suns relic, he does still have a couple to burn here. Teddy making sure he knows the exact numbers for the distances here he can get out of Magnus with a warp time. He's going to mark that spot right there with a die to represent where Magnus will be after his first move. And then he's going to likely measure from that point to see what spots he can put himself in after a warp time. All right, that die there representing potential space for his Demon Prince, the large wing Demon Prince you see at the center of the screen.
One thing I really like about the Demon Prince, coming away from the game for a moment, just looking at the aesthetics, Demon Princes have the ability to be so incredibly customized. Different models, different wingspans. You look at the Demon Princes he has on the table, and none of them look remotely alike.
Yeah, he does have a handful of pretty unique princes on the table. He's got that one in the center in particular is one heck of a model, just a huge wingspan. And then, of course, when you set them next to Magnus, it sort of puts everything in perspective. But yeah, we see here Teddy, before he finishes moving any models, he's really planning out exactly what he wants to do with his psychic phase.
Okay. This is a pretty crucial time frame for him, so he definitely he needs to measure twice and cut once to be sure.
Yeah, his movement and his smites need to be hitting the exact targets he wants them to hit this turn. So what he's actually doing here, he's taking these dice, he's representing where he knows his models are going to land, and then he's measuring the distance of where they're gonna be to the nearest enemy targets to figure out where his smites are gonna go.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we've got an advance coming out of Armand from the back here. He's gonna push up onto that center objective. And based on where that die is placed, it looks like he's gonna have an angle to potentially tag Magnus with a warp time. All right, so Teddy says, no, that's not far enough on my advance. Uses a command point to go ahead and get a little bit of extra distance on this advance by Armand. This is definitely a point in the game where every inch counts for these models.
Absolutely. That wingspan we just were talking about, making it a little harder on Teddy to get his model where he wants it to
Yeah,
be.
he's going to go ahead and rotate it here so that he can fit it where he needs it to be.
We'll get some pictures for the Roundabout Facebook group for these Demon Princes because they look incredible.
We can absolutely do that, yeah. All right, Magnus making his move, jumping forward here. We've got some Princes in very aggressive posturing along with Magnus. And this has got to be a big psychic phase for Teddy. One last check on the range, and Teddy says, all right, let's do this.
First thing first. Weaver of Fate.
All right, Weaver of Fates coming over to Magnus once again.
Let's do that. 3+ impulse save.
And it goes off on a 9.
He is Weaver.
Technically a 10, because
Right.
Armand.
Right.
Go ahead and give him prescience on him.
All right, Prescience coming in.
Goes off on a 9. Then he's
Goes
going
off on a 9. And last but certainly not least, the warp time just barely getting off thanks to that +1. And that was a very important psychic phase. All right, so he's actually going to push up with the Demon Prince first, positioning him to where if he's casting a smite, it's going to be hitting those robots. He may just be looking to charge with Magnus into that Ranger squad in the front. Maybe not put him into quite as risky of a situation.
Yeah. It's just super unlikely that the robots are going to be killing the Demon Prince in Overwatch. So he does have a little bit of time left to get Magnus in there. Because if the Demon Prince locks up the Castellans, then they're useless for that turn. Magnus finishes mopping up the chaff, and he's where he needs to be in the turn.
Yeah, there's absolutely something to be said for just like charging the onager and then rotating back into them, and then from there getting a whole extra psychic phase into those robots before you actually declare any charges.
Goes off on a 12 for D3 mortal wounds. For 1.
All right, so that's Doom Bolt going through there. Now Bolt of Change, rerolling the 1 thanks to Magnus being himself.
For 2.
Couple of additional damage. Looks like he's just gradually trying to soften down that
And then
that onager.
Go super smite that. Hold on. No, I'm actually gonna do Infernal Gateway on that unit.
All right, looks like Infernal Gateway.
Super smite.
Nope, just a smite coming off of Magnus into that Ranger squad in the front. And that is a 2d6 smite once again.
For 2d6 for 5.
We see 5 mortal wounds, and that is going to pick up the unit. So the last bit of that screen has been eliminated.
And this is where the AdMech's going to be in trouble. We talked about the power the Demon Prince is getting in on the robots, and everything kind of depended on the screen to hold. But when you don't even have to charge them before they're already gone,
nothing.
It puts the AdMech on the back foot really badly.
Here to here.
All right, so here we see the charge. Demon Prince charging that onager as we anticipated, and an audible sigh coming out of Eddie, realizing, oh, you're not charging my robots. Now I see what's coming.
Yep.
So 5 shots coming out of the neutron here. Let's see if he can pull any 6s. He gets 1.
A command point 1?
He's going to command point 1 here.
He's got to.
Do I get it back? Yes, I do.
He is. Oh, he gets the 6. Let's see if he can get it done here.
And
Oh, I'm sorry. So he has. Okay, so kudos to Eddie. He has been sequencing every time he has command point
Alright,
rerolled.
let me
He
see.
rolls to get his command point back first, and then
That's a 9-inch target.
to see if he gets the hit. So
Oh.
that 6 was actually getting the command point back,
I am
not
sorry.
Okay.
not getting the hit.
Sorry, I'm
Wait a second, I
sorry.
know he had wounds on him.
All right, so here we go. Demon Prince coming in. He's going to leave himself 1 inch out of the robots, and then he's going to pile in and touch them. And he is,
A victorious.
Teddy is pumped
Yep.
with that move. He knows that that may very well win him this game.
Yep.
So I am choosing.
Now,
I had to choose
he
this.
cannot attack the
So I got
robots.
7
Doesn't
attacks.
need to.
I am
He
prescient.
cannot attack the robots,
5
but
and 6s are
he's got 7
10
attacks. He's
So I got
prescience.
2, 3, roll 1.
Yeah, so we've got some very, woo.
So I got
And
1,
he
2,
has
3,
been
4, 5
going
extra hits.
crazy with this Death of the False Emperor. That's 5 extra hits. He's going to roll these attacks. They're hitting on 2s, re-rolling the 1s
Re-rolling 1.
because he's a Demon Prince. And
Roll
that's
hit.
another 5 hits. All
And
right,
your toughness
so
is
here comes the
7.
wounds. Strength 7, toughness 7, wounding on 4s.
So you
Not
got,
as good on the wound roll there.
3 wounds. And
Just
-2.
3. They're at -2. We're going to see the Onager here on the 5-up with the reroll 1s.
Saves 2 of them.
Only 2 damage getting through on the Dune Crawler there, but the damage is done. That Demon Prince has done his job.
So they're stuck finally. They can't shoot me no more.
And with how Call and the Dune Crawler are positioned with the ruins that are just to the side of where they're standing, the players were just discussing, he may not be able to get them out of this combat. All right, so the robots and the Dune Crawler are going to swing back.
And so right now that's good. I had to pull that one off.
Yeah, so Teddy, several audible sighs of relief here. He looks like he just had a weight lifted off of his shoulders with that charge. So he gets to the bottom of Teddy's turn. He's able to kill 1 thanks to taking out the Rangers there. He's definitely holding 1. And he's got a good shot at getting some headhunter points deep into this deployment zone on the coming turns. All right, so Eddie trying to figure out what options he's still got available here. Without that 500-point unit of those robots able to shoot this turn, he's got a hole to dig himself out of here.
Just wanted to double check on something. It's not going to work. Machine Spirit Revenge requires the unit to be brought to 0 wounds for an explosion check. So I was just curious. I was like, if you can just make the one on the far right, just
yeah, free up the other 4.
exactly. I'd pay that.
Heck, throw the Dune Crawler at it
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah. Yeah, when the difference is the probably 75% of your firepower getting to shoot or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take it. All right, so Eddie giving it some thought here, though, but definitely a tough position for him to be in here. You have to wonder, whether or not he should have been moving that backline Ranger unit up before this turn. The Zangors had dropped. There wasn't any deep striking left. He could have potentially provided just a bit of extra screening. And as you can see, if he'd had just a couple of Rangers in the way there to prevent the touch on, from that Demon Prince, this would be a very different game.
So we're not completely out of the woods yet. So everything falls out of combat. The Onager on the bottom left is not in combat. How many wounds do we still have left on the Demon Prince?
The Demon Prince, I don't believe, took any return damage when it charged in there, or from the Overwatch, or from the hits back.
Okay.
So I believe the Demon Prince is at full strength.
Sure. One good volley from the Dune Crawler.
He could luck up and get there.
With Call supporting, possibly, because Call's packing a strength 10 weapon of his own.
Yeah.
You're down 1 Demon Prince, and you can reestablish with advance rolls. You can reestablish your screen for your robots for 1 more turn.
Potentially, yeah.
And then it comes down to robots versus Magnus. because even if this Demon Prince doesn't do the job,
It's a tight game.
Magnus will be here very soon.
He's on his.
Yeah, he's knocking on the door right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Magnus being positioned where he is, he could charge any of those units next
Yep.
turn. He could be smiting almost any of those units next turn.
Yep.
And Teddy has stacked Mortal Wound Psychic powers onto Magnus in this game.
Yep.
Almost all of the support powers are on Armon specifically.
Sure.
And that means that Magnus has the ability to kick out not just a Super Smite, but also a Doom Bolt, also a Bolt of Change,
Yep.
and has Infernal Gateway.
Yep.
And with how tightly packed
No, I got the read.
Eddie's backline is, that Infernal Gateway could be absolutely devastating.
I need
Yeah.
to kill something this turn.
It definitely could.
All right, so shooting.
All right, so we're moving into the shooting phase here for Eddie.
Called Wrath for command point back.
See if I get it.
Um,
No.
Down to 7. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna shoot. It's gonna be on this guy. We're gonna shoot the 2 bolter guys.
At the
One
Poxwalker.
guy, yeah, they should be-
And
Oh,
so
they're in 24.
here's the problem
That's 24
for Eddie,
but you
and
know
this is
what's-
what the players were discussing. He's in the
That's
Protector Protocol, which has been allowing him to double tap his shooting.
One hit.
Mhm.
And
He can't
Whilst
move at
this
all.
battle protocol is in effect, the unit cannot move.
Yeah, he can't move at all.
So he cannot fall back from that Demon Prince.
So if you remember when we discussed earlier, when I mentioned that there was no data smith,
Yeah.
for him to do what he needs to do right now, he can only go into double fight
Reroll.
Yeah.
and loses his shooting completely.
Yeah, so he's in a real tough spot here. That Demon Prince touching them has completely eliminated that unit from this turn of the game. We do see some small arms fire, though. Rangers coming in here. Eddie's going to do everything he can to finish off at least one unit this turn. And we talked about it a lot in the first game. Every point matters, and if he can get a kill on a unit here and potentially keep Eddie off of killing
command point to re-roll that one.
killing more this
No,
turn,
takes
Alright,
it.
see if I get a command
he
point
can
back.
still keep this tight.
And then damage.
All right, so command point reroll coming in there. There's the reroll on the damage,
And,
getting the full
That's
6.
a mortal wound as well.
Was it damage? No, that was
No,
no,
we messed it up.
Yeah.
We wounded on 3.
Yeah, you wounded on 3.
All right, so the players just double checking here, making sure they're not missing any damage. But a big 6 coming through on Magnus there. That is very important for Eddie, because that means he's done 9 points of damage. That's 2 Kingslayer points for him. Even if he doesn't get the kill,
That's terrible.
still very relevant.
5 up. Yep, made it.
So one thing we were talking about when we were talking about the Castellans being locked out, they're not just locked out for a turn. As long as Teddy plays this smart and
They only give
mines his pylon, they're out of the game permanently.
Yeah, they're not coming back in.
Yeah,
And
Eddie
with the
has,
way that they're lined up,
weapon.
Yep.
Call may not even be able to get into that combat to try and push the Demon Prince off.
he can't get out from around them. The only way you could do that is if you move the Dune Crawler back.
Yeah.
And move him back again and move Call through.
These 2 guys here and him.
Can they fit in through that? I don't think they can fit through that. They're not going to
So
no.
on the back line here, Eddie's trying to find any charge angle he can, but because of the amount of space that's left there between the Dune Crawler and the robots, he'd have to go all the way around the base of that Dune Crawler to get in there. So instead, on the far side of the table, we're seeing the Death Company trying to complete a charge into these Poxwalkers, see if he can pick up a kill point on the backside like that. Now, he did put a few shots into that last Poxwalker that's in the middle of the table. Unfortunately, some pretty poor hit rolls leads to only 1 wound coming through, and Teddy's able to make his 5 up.
I'm going to put them right here. So this is one we do like this, so you're in the 3 inches still.
Yep.
So
One of the things that you had mentioned earlier was all of the mortal wound spam
these 3 guys will be
on
attacked.
Magnus and all of the support casting on Aramon, and that is incredibly smart strategically. Saying that because Aramon is a character and he can hide right behind Magnus. He's on his +1 to cast, so he's ultimately the best support that Magnus could ask for. He moves almost as fast as Magnus too.
Yeah, and Teddy, he showed some good lines when he was moving forward and back in the center. But right now what we see is the Death Company coming in onto the Poxwalkers, and they are able to get the job done. Unless that's...
That is unfortunate.
And
One
my
Poxwalker
tag,
left. No, it's
and it's 5.
a single
Nothing.
Poxwalker still
So over
standing.
here,
Doesn't do any damage back to the Death Company, but
Do we pile in and fight again then?
I don't believe Eddie may not have the command points left to do that.
Huh.
Yeah, we're moving to the next combat here. We see the robots piling in. You know, he figures, hey, if I'm stuck in this combat,
Might as well get into it.
I may as well get into it.
Now it says they can't move during the movement phase
You know, let me take a look at that here because those may have to remain static. While this battle protocol is in effect, this unit cannot move or charge, but you double the number of IE.
Okay.
So it just says move. I'd have to double check the FAQ.
Invul saves?
Yeah, they didn't roll saves.
Um,
I'll get to him in a minute. Let's finish this one.
But it looks like we're setting up for a big combat here. He's going to see if he can somehow push this Demon Prince off of his back line.
4s and 6, 4s and 4s.
3 attacks each. I thought they had 1 each.
No, that'd be their punchy. If they were the punchy ones.
Right, their stats are just 3.
No, oh, they are stat 3.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but it,
All right, so we're going to see the attacks coming in here from these robots onto the Demon Prince.
4s.
Wounding on 4s here, he's able to get 3-2. Now these are
3 wounds.
just
I have a 3
basic
plus invul
attacks.
save.
But
Command one.
armor 3, and
my guy will
looks
attack
like Demon
back
Prince
those
is
guys.
just fine.
I'm still pression.
Okay.
So 5 and
All right,
6
so
is
the
fine.
Prince now cracking into the robots,
Wow.
and this could
So
get
3,
nasty.
So let's re-roll this one.
Rerolling
So
that
3
one.
extra attacks.
Looks like 3 extra attacks coming into that Death of the False Emperor,
So all hits.
and that's 3 extra hits. So
And
we've
what's
got
your toughness?
10 hits.
Your toughness 6.
Tough and 6, so I'm needing 3s.
All right, 3s on the
So
wound
you
roll here. It
have
looks
2,
like
4,
a pretty
6,
healthy amount of damage.
7
That's
wounds at
6,
-2.
7 wounds coming through at -2 onto the robots. And here comes some 5-ups. So he's able to save 3,
That's 8 damage.
8 damage.
but that's 8
dies.
damage that comes through onto the robot, so 1 dies.
I'm going to spend the command point to blow him up.
Okay.
And here it comes.
If I get it
Command
back,
point being
no.
spent to blow him up.
Alright.
How much-
So, hold on.
Is
Let's,
it D6?
we had 8 damage total?
Yeah.
Alright, so this guy, take this guy here.
Mhm.
He's dead.
Mhm.
And then we had
All right,
8
so
damage.
here comes the explosion.
How much was each hit? 2?
2 damage piece.
Alright, so this would carry over. Alright, and then D6 range for 2. He'll get.
All right, 2-inch range on the explosion.
Yep.
And then.
It's
for my
definitely going
guy,
to hit the Demon Prince
2.
and
for
one
your
of
guy, 2.
Eddie's own models as well. So that's 2 mortal wounds coming through on the Demon Prince. He's down to 6.
So you can blow up each turn? Auto?
I can take I'll run out of command points eventually, but
Is
That
that
one.
during any time you blow up, or?
anytime you go down to 0, you can spend a command point to blow it up.
All right, so
It is my turn.
the first little batch of that kamikaze admech coming through is able to pull a couple of mortal wounds off of the Demon Prince, but still pretty healthy at 6 wounds. It's going to take a lot more work for him to get through.
Hold me.
Now, with both of those Poxwalker units staying alive,
Go through, yeah. Do you hold more?
it looks as though he's got hold 1, but Eddie was not able to score kill 1.
You hold 1.
So Teddy's going to be pulling away a bit here with kill more, hold more.
So I got 3, 3.
And without being able to take out that Demon Prince
No, I got 2.
or finish either of those Poxwalker units, Eddie doesn't pick up any additional secondary points either. So as of right now, we're looking at with a 3-3-4 for Teddy in the primary. He's got 10 there plus another 6, so Teddy's at 16 now. And Eddie with a 1-point turn, he's going to be looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. 9 points for Eddie. So that 4-point lead we saw definitely starting to expand here.
So here we find ourselves back in a position that we were talking about before. What you do when you've started to pull the lead
You haven't paralleled since.
and we're on turn 4.
Yeah, top of 4.
Where do you draw the line between what you take off the board this turn and what you leave for next turn? Because the Castellans aren't going to go down. They, as tough as they are, as many wounds as they have, even with Death to the False Emperor, it's actually almost a concern to kill them, because every time you kill them,
Yeah, the mortal wounds happen.
they could blow up in your face. And if you haven't killed every single one of them, all you're doing is releasing them to shoot again. So if I'm Teddy, I'm almost half tempted to not swing with a weapon at all, like we talked about before.
Yeah, what we may see is we may see Teddy just swing into the Dune Crawler.
Right here.
That's possible
We are
too.
going to do
If he can
death hex on
still
him.
wheel around to get into that combat.
Crawl.
But it looks like right now
Death hex.
Teddy's got his
Doesn't have
eyes
to
set
work. I need
on
him.
taking
Any-
out Call this turn.
Sure.
He just
And then
cast
he's
Death
gonna
Hex
do-
targeting him. Fails it though, so we'll
Boom
see if that changes his
on-
decisions.
he's gonna Smite.
So he's got the Death Company that he
Does
can
go
take
off on
out
5,
with the
so
Demon Prince.
D3.
He's got the one existing Dune Crawler left that's not down in the mud, that Magnus can take care of this turn. So he safely leaves himself in a position to take Killmore by killing 2, maybe 3 units.
Yeah, I think from Teddy's perspective here, he wants to get rid of those deco.
Sure.
Right, that pulls Eddie off of another objective. It puts him in a position where, with the right movement, he may actually be able to score the bonus.
Give me a big
I
one.
think he's
For one,
positioned
so it doesn't
Magnus
hit
in the
my
way that
guy.
he has because he wants to take out
And he goes
those
against your
two
guy then.
those 2 tactical marines, and then turn around and take out that Dune Crawler.
1.
And with that, he will have effectively removed everything except for Call as far as threats are concerned. But we do see some psychic powers going into the robots. I would not be surprised based on how this game has progressed if Eddie does not have the command points left to blow up those Castellans.
Back on his top tier. Top tier. Yep.
And with some healing down on Magnus, he is healed back into his top profile. And so we're going to
goes
continue
off
to see
on a
the
10.
full bonus on his psychic phase.
And Teddy has been dominating this psychic phase. Like, not even just, there have been so few failed casts.
Yeah, he's had very successful psychic phases throughout the game, and we anticipated from that from the beginning, since there's not any
Right.
counter from Eddie. But even with that, his dice have been pretty good throughout the whole psychic phase. It helps that he's got +1 on so many characters. It helps that he's got +2 on so many characters on Magnus.
Yep.
But here comes the warp time.
Damn it.
And the
Barrel
barn
time.
doors
But it does go
open.
off.
That is his 4th double 6 perils of this game.
Aramon. So
Not
he
a
takes
single
2
double 1
more
though, so
wounds,
he's got to
and
be
it
feeling
does
pretty
go
good.
off on his 13th.
You gotta have a problem.
Now that's on Aramon. Luckily, he's pretty healthy at this point in the game.
Magnus is
And
into
the warp time does go off, and here comes Magnus.
You will probably do so very well.
All right,
And-
so very aggressively moving Magnus in there on Call. It's not looking
No,
like this is
no,
going to be
this
a
is not
fun
good.
turn for the AdMech.
Smite.
Man, I wish he had some points left. As much as I love the AdMech, turning
You want him to kamikaze Call? Is that
no,
what you
no,
meant?
turn
Okay,
Call
okay.
into a spawn.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would.
Just salt in the
Goes
wound
off
at that
on 11,
point.
So it's the big.
Some people wouldn't even call that
D6
rude.
mortal wound.
But here we go.
So it's
We've got a
yep.
D6 smite coming out of Armon. That's how Teddy plans to pick up the tactical marines here, and he's able to do it. So that's 1 unit down, and that's Teddy pushing
How many wounds do these guys
any
have?
potential contesting of that center objective away.
Right.
How many wounds
So
does-
Armon's going to hold that center objective,
8.
and Teddy just deciding where he's going to assign the rest of the mortal wounds right now.
Let's do something here. Let's see if I can really pull this thing off. 3 inches from him is base, so that won't be 3 inches. Be 3 inches here, 3 inches here.
It looks like Teddy here trying to figure out how much mileage he can get out of an infernal gateway.
Do we really want to do infernal gaze? Yeah, we're going to do infernal gaze.
So let's talk about Infernal Gateway,
Yeah,
why
12
he's
plus
making
D6
his
mortal
play
wounds.
here. So let's go over. Well, does he get it?
10, so
Looks
it's
like
only
he does.
D3 mortal wounds. So
He does get it off. It's
Now on
only
call,
it's
he's the
D3.
closest,
It's not
and
the
it
super.
goes to 3 inches from him. So
But
call for 2.
Okay.
so 2
and
damage
for the
on the call,
robots, For 1.
and 1 onto the robots. So he's able to get 3 damage out of that power.
You said one more
Not a
about
bad start at all.
robots?
Yes, sir. Then he's going to do his super smite.
And
On
here
it.
comes the big Magnus smite.
Nope. That's
7
D6
there, so
mortal
that's just going to be a
wounds.
D6.
For 3
Another
on
3
call.
on the call.
He may not even have to fight call at
He
this
may
rate.
not.
Yep.
He may
And
not.
he's
He's
gonna
got one more offensive
Doom,
power here.
do Doom Bolt.
Doom Bolt.
Oh.
It does peril for
Sharps on
300
it.
wounds. It does for 3. On a 2+, I ignore them. I ignore only 2 of them, so I do take a wound. It does
All
go
right,
off
Magnus
for
takes
D3
one mortal off
for
of that
3
perils,
all day.
but a full 3, and that is a dead Belisarius here.
That is 5.
Okay.
Just a disgusting amount of mortal wounds that this build of Magnus can put out, and that is it coming to fruition right there.
I am just impressed. 5 double 6s.
Yeah.
5 perils on 6s, not a single on 1s. 5 perils in
Yeah.
one game.
Don't worry, y'all. These are table dice provided by the turn. Both players are rolling the same dice.
Well, in any other army, the Psyker that does this is just gone.
Right.
By now.
Yeah, but when you're casting off
So-
Demon Princes
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
Primarchs,
Yeah.
suddenly it's just not so bad to roll those perils as long as they are the 6s and not the
Yeah.
1s.
And I mean, to be fair, it's not like the dice rolls have been kind either. The perils on everybody except for this one
Yeah.
have been to the tune of 2 and 3 damage apiece.
Yeah, well, and this was a 3 damage perils.
Yeah.
Magnus just gets
Reduces
to saves now. The players talk through with what's going to happen in this last combat phase here, and there's the handshake coming out of Eddie. It looks like Teddy and Eddie are just going to go ahead and talk through the rest of what would happen here. And yeah, from this point, it's going to be pretty difficult for Eddie to fight back here. He's
Yeah.
got a Doom Crawler left, but it may be getting charged by Magnus.
Exactly.
These robots are tied up. The Demon Prince has the ability to rotate
Yep.
around the robots to tag that Dune Crawler again.
Yep.
So it's still not going to shoot the following turn. And because of the fact that there is the Death Company unit on the far side there that's going to get hit by that Prince this turn, and there's still in this back area a couple of Ranger squads, there are plenty of kill points left on the table
Oh, yeah.
for Teddy to take advantage of.
I'll hold one, right?
He's maxed out on his secondaries as well at this point.
He's going to be, because Call gives him Warlord.
Yep.
Call gives him an extra Headhunter point.
So there's one.
I believe the 2 Engine Seers are back there.
Yep.
And that means that he is going to max his Headhunter.
Next round. So there's 0 on that one.
He maxed
And
Gangbusters.
he already maxed Gangbusters, yeah. He bleeds out to get the last strike, and he's definitely getting Linebreaker. On the primaries, on this turn, he's able to contest that objective there in Eddie's deployment zone, so he's actually going to get a 5-point primary on the next 3 turns, it looks like.
Plus 12 is 32. No, 34. And 3, 6.
So the player's talking through the turns here. It looks like the total that they've landed on for Teddy is 34 points. And on Eddie's side of the table, it looks like a 13 for him to finish out the game.
Good, man.
That was a good game.
So 34-13 going to be the result there.
Mistake you did right there. Too close, and I was like,
Another really
measuring to see if
powerful
I can jump him. And that's when I realized,
close
oh my
to
God,
the
I
game
can
that
jump
we
him
see
over
there
the
against the
charge
Admech
this,
army.
and then consolidate
So,
this. Once that was
Admech
done,
showing that they have the
Done mine.
potential to have a really great start. And even a great middle game. But-
Yeah, as long as the robots hadn't gotten tagged there, this
Yeah.
is a very tight game.
Absolutely.
The Demon Princes are extremely vulnerable with those Poxwalker squads gone. And even Magnus isn't going to survive a volley with the 3++ or not from
Yep.
those robots. So fortunate for Teddy to be able to find an angle.
Yep.
Okay.
But Teddy lamenting now about actually the movement with the Zangors from earlier in the game that we were talking about. Feels like he should have given himself that wrap on, or that touch on the robots a turn earlier. But even without it, a very resilient list.
Yep.
Those Tzeentch Demon Princes are as strong as they've been ever since the book came out.
Absolutely.
And
I still like the Admech list. I feel like that one charge made all the difference.
yeah, absolutely.
So-
It absolutely did. You know, the Dragoons, you're in a tough position, right? You
Yeah.
can't not get offense out of the Dragoons,
Exactly.
but you're You're working through that many smites every turn.
Right.
You're only gonna live for so long.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's no saves out of the AdMech against the mortal wounds.
Absolutely.
And
I had a chance to talk to Aaron in game one, prior to game one, about this. What you have to do with AdMech and what you have to consider taking. And this is just more evidence to support that. Things like Sisters of Silence, things like Inquisitors for trying to interrupt that. Even going so far as Calexis Assassins.
Yeah.
Because you keep finding yourself in these positions where, with the right rolls, Psychic just dominates the shooting phase.
Yeah.
Just,
and we're at a point in the game right now with how 8th edition is set up to protect characters, where the places where those psychic powers are coming from, it doesn't matter how much shooting you have if you can't target them.
Absolutely.
And so, we saw a list here that's much more slanted at killing screens, right?
Right.
With the full 5 robots, with the Dragoons, right? With even the small deco squad contributing to that.
Yep.
So, I think what we saw here is Eddie recognizing that he's going to play against armies that look like Teddy's army.
Yeah.
And adding a significant amount of anti-horde shooting, and combat to try and deal with that, so that he can get to the characters.
I agree.
But we see here just how easy it is to be a couple of inches too far in one direction.
Oh yeah.
And the whole game plan just implodes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So even outside of some of the big roles that you saw on Teddy's side in the psychic phase, because as we mentioned, he paid for those. Very much paid for those.
He did almost more damage to his own characters than Eddie was able to.
Even with that being said, it came down to being able to break the walls down on the castle. I think he made a great call as a general to focus a relic onto the Zangors. Because that's not something that's static. Relics aren't static. You decide on those before the game.
Yeah.
And being able to make that call, get those successful psychic powers off, make that charge. It was a sacrifice play that in the long run really paid all the dividends that led to the rest of the game's end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he did a good job of not trying to get too aggressive too quickly.
Right.
He picked his spot where he decided to go in with the Prince, and it had a great result. We ended up in a situation where he's able to get his enough throughput with the mortal wounds to where that screen just melts away.
Right.
We saw really, I think the part of the game that I was the most impressed with from Teddy's side was that movement of Magnus in the first turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where he comes out, he gets his damage, he uses the warp time in a sequence where he treats it like a Fade and Fire.
Sure.
That is how he started to crack the screen.
Right.
That's how he created that opening in the middle. That ultimately the Demon Prince ended up moving through to get to the Onager and ultimately touch the robots. We saw their very patient and methodical movement out of Magnus.
As a review question and just kind of closing up, I would love to touch base with Teddy and see if the Demon Prince wasn't on purpose. Because if he placed and left the Demon Prince in a precarious the Magnus pull for the full 4-point gangbuster swing.
We have to make sure that we don't preface this question so that he can't take credit for it unless he
exactly,
thought it.
Exactly.
But if that's what he did, I would be very impressed. That's a very high level, head game play.
Exactly.
But guys, that was another awesome game. We thank you so much for joining us in round 2 here of the Barnyard Brawl.